Chapter 675. You look very good when you smile, much better than when you keep a straight face, Akatsuki said with a smile. You also look very good when you smile, much better than when you wear a veil, Yi-fan said to Akatsuki with a smile, while wiping Baihu's body. Akatsuki's beautiful eyes curved as if she was smiling. Have you finished reporting to Matsumoto Takeyoshi? Yi-fan asked Akatsuki. Yes, Akatsuki nodded and said. What did he say? Yi-fan asked again. He didn't say anything, just said that we have worked hard, and asked us to rest for a few days, Akatsuki replied. After listening, Yi-fan nodded. Do we have anything to do in the next few days? Akatsuki asked Yi-fan. We won't go anywhere in the next few days, we will rest in the East China Sea. Yi-fan said to Akatsuki while combing Baihu's pure white hair with a comb. I think that in a few days, Chi-Yao should be back. I have to ask him about the task that Matsumoto Takeyoshi gave him. Secondly, I have to wait for Onijiro to come back and ask him to help me see what the Imperial Jade Seal is. Taking advantage of the next few days, I will practice again to adjust the balance of the spiritual power in my body, so as not to lose my humanity again. Akatsuki nodded. By the way, if you have nothing to do in the next few days, come to me, Yi-fan continued. I see that your sword skills are good, but your spiritual chi cultivation and movement skills still need to be improved. If you don't mind, I want to give you a few pointers, so that in the future, when you face a master, you can calmly deal with him. Akatsuki's eyes lit up and she asked with a pleasantly surprised expression, You want to teach me how to cultivate my spiritual chi and movement skills? Of course, if you don't want to, just pretend I didn't say anything, Yi-fan said as he stroked Baihu's soft and white fur. In the world of cultivation, all the major sects and clans placed great importance on apprenticeship. This was even more so for the sects and clans in Japan. If one were to rashly learn other techniques, it would be seen as a betrayal and a disgrace to the sect. It was also for this reason that Yi-fan told Akatsuki to give her some pointers instead of teaching her some move. The difference between the two words had a completely different meaning. As long as you're willing to teach, I'm willing to learn, Akatsuki happily said, her pair of beautiful eyes curved into a crescent moon. The reason why she was so happy was not only because Yi-fan's cultivation had reached the pinnacle of perfection and was invincible. More importantly, once she had Yi-fan's spiritual chi in her body, this would be a matter of life. The spiritual chi would accompany her for the rest of her life, never to be separated. As the saying goes, all good things must come to an end. Between her and Yi-fan there would be a day when they would part. Although she couldn't be with Yi-fan forever, to be able to fuse with Yi-fan's spiritual chi and never be separated, this life's true love would not be in vain. All right, Yi-fan said with a smile, rest first today. From tomorrow onwards, come here secretly every night to find me. I'll teach you a few moves. I don't dare to say anything else, but it's more than enough to increase your combat power by 2 or 3 times. Teaching a supreme technique naturally couldn't be done openly. It had to be done secretly and without being noticed, especially in the East Sea where there were so many experts. Okay. Akatsuki nodded heavily, as happy as a child. Yi-fan had always felt guilty towards Akatsuki, and his feelings towards her were complicated. This Japanese woman, who looked exactly like his wife, was deeply in love with him. She was even willing to give up her life to save him. This was the true love of the world. Facing such an extraordinary woman with such deep feelings, Yi-fan had always wanted to find an opportunity to make things clear with her. However, every time he thought of Akatsuki's sad, disappointed, and teary eyes, Yi-fan couldn't bear to say it. He wanted to repay Akatsuki, but he didn't know how to do so. Right now, he had nothing except money and cultivation. However, to the pure and clean Akatsuki, common things like jade, jewels, silk, gold, and silver ingots were nothing in her eyes. The only thing Yi-fan could give her, other than his care, was his cultivation. In the blink of an eye, it was night. When night fell, the sea breeze blew. Although it wasn't strong, it still caused the small boat Yi Fan was on to sway slightly. Inside the boat, Yi Fan sat cross-legged on a praying mat. His mind was as calm as still water. The white fox lay quietly beside the stove, listening to the sound of the waves outside, not moving at all. Every time Yi Fan cultivated, it would obediently lie down at the side, not daring to disturb him. At this moment, Yi Fan focused and cleared his mind. He closed his eyes and looked inside himself, carefully examining the spiritual energy in his body. Right now, in his body, all kinds of spiritual energy were densely gathered together. It was colorful and brilliant. The colorful mysterious sky secret spiritual energy, the dazzling blue proud moon heavenly scripture spiritual energy, the bloody red heavenly demon spiritual energy, the red blood phoenix spiritual energy, the white ice snake inner core spiritual energy, the red fire snake dragon pearl spiritual energy, and the golden pure yang spiritual energy that Brother Kim had passed to him. Other than these spiritual energies, there was another spiritual energy circulating in Yi Fan's meridians. This spiritual energy was formless and overbearing, but it was also terrifyingly quiet. It slowly flowed through Yi Fan's meridians, looking very low-key. Compared to the other spiritual energies that occupied Yi Fan's Qi Si, this spiritual energy was completely different. It only flowed through Yi Fan's meridians, but never entered Yi Fan's Qi Si. What was even more inconceivable to Yi Fan was that when the other spiritual energies in his meridians encountered this formless spiritual energy, they would involuntarily open up a path for it to pass through. Even the rainbow spiritual energy that had survived the heavenly tribulation and the heavenly demon energy that was filled with violent blood-red light had to avoid it. This was the evil Qi. The evil Qi that he was born with. Yi Fan, who was looking inside himself, was shocked. No wonder when he was born, the heavenly thunder rumbled and the blood moon appeared. This evil Qi was indeed powerful. In the situation where the remaining 2 seals had not been broken, this overflowing evil Qi was actually so powerful and overbearing. It could make the heavenly demon spiritual energy and the phoenix dance of the 9th heaven spiritual energy to avoid it. If all 3 seals were broken, wouldn't this evil Qi be heaven-defying? Thinking of this, Yi Fan was shocked and broke out in cold sweat. The fact that the heavenly demon's power, the phoenix dances of the 9th heaven, and the proud moon heavenly scripture did not give way to each other was already enough of a headache for him. Now, with the addition of the evil Qi, Yi Fan was at a loss for what to do. Knock, knock, knock. Just as Yi Fan was concentrating on observing the spirit power inside his body, a rhythmic knocking sound came from outside the cabin. Yi Fan returned to his senses from the state of inner vision and slowly opened his eyes. Knock, 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 the knocking sound continued. Brother Gui Mu, please come in, Yi Fan said as he stood up from the praying mat. Yi Fan was very familiar with the person who was knocking outside the cabin. Who else could it be other than Onijiro, who had a body full of ghost Qi and no evil Qi? Ha ha! Passing the heavenly tribulation is really different. Onijiro's hearty laughter came from outside the cabin. Whoosh! As soon as his voice fell, a shadow flashed. Onijiro, with a face as clear as jade and wearing a black robe, appeared in Yi Fan's cabin. Ever since passing the heavenly tribulation, Yi Fan did not use the spirit Qi barrier to seal the cabin. The reason was very simple. Before the person came close, Yi Fan, with his heaven-defying 5 senses, had already sensed who it was. Onijiro's cultivation could be ranked in the top 3 among the experts, and his cultivation method was the Ghost Dao. Passing through the cabin was just a small trick to him. Brother Gui Mu. Yi Fan came in front of Onijiro and greeted him with a smile. Onijiro's eyes lit up when he saw Yi Fan. Yi Fan's eyes were like lightning, and his essence Qi flowed. There was a faint 7-colored brilliance flashing in his eyes. Not only that, Yi Fan's entire body was surrounded by an auspicious aura and auspicious light. He was completely different from before. There is an old saying in the Central Plains: a scholar who has been away for 3 days must be looked at with new eyes. Onijiro smiled as he looked Yi Fan up and down. The ancients did not deceive me. Yi Fan smiled and helplessly shook his head. The spirit chi in his body was in danger of going berserk at any time, but in the eyes of others, his cultivation was already heaven-defying. Yi Fan, Kun, why are you in such a hurry to find me? I didn't even have time to drink a mouthful of hot tea before I rushed over. Oh, that's not right. It should be Bufan, Kun. Look at my brain. Onijiro smiled and shook off his black robe. He directly sat on the praying mat next to the wooden table. Then, he picked up the teapot on the table and poured himself a cup of hot tea. He shook his head and blew on it a few times, then gently took a sip. He and Yi Fan were already close friends, so there was no need for so many formalities. Yi Fan smiled after hearing this. It was clear that the ninjas attached great importance to the task he gave them. As soon as Onijiro returned, they conveyed his message to Onijiro. Yi Fan smiled as he sat across from Onijiro and said, "It's nothing urgent. It's just that I obtained an item today, and would like Brother Guei-mu to take a look at it." Take a look at it? Onijiro was stunned at first, then he smiled. Bufan, Kun thinks too highly of me. I am not an antique expert, so don't blame me if I make a mistake. Brother Guei-mu is too modest. This item is very evil. I'm afraid only a ghost Dao expert like Brother Guei-mu would be able to see through it. Yi Fan smiled as he poured himself a cup of tea and said, "What kind of treasure is it?" Onijiro heard Yi Fan's tone and immediately put down the teacup in his hand, his interest piqued. Yi Fan was the eldest son and eldest grandson of the Yi family. He came from a prestigious family and had seen all kinds of treasures. In addition, he had already passed the heavenly tribulation and his strength was heaven-defying. He was no longer the same as before. If even he couldn't see through it, it was definitely not an ordinary item. "Here, it's this," Yi Fan said as he took out the Qilin ghost seal from his sleeve and placed it on the wooden table. Buzz, as soon as the Qilin ghost seal appeared, a brilliant light burst out and filled the room with a black glow. Hiss! The moment the Qilin ghost seal appeared, Onijiro instantly sucked in a breath of cold air. The Qilin ghost seal in front of him was eerie and sinister. Its spiritual power was unprecedentedly strong. Looking at Onijiro's expression, Yi Fan raised his teacup and took a sip of tea. It was obvious that he had found the right person. Chapter 676. Thunder Town, Luoyu Village. Yi Fan put down his teacup and said to Onijiro, "Thunder Town? Luoyu Village?" Onijiro was shocked. "The Luoyu Village that has lightning, thunder, and rain all year round?" "That's right." Yi Fan nodded. No wonder, no wonder." Onijiro nodded solemnly. "What exactly is this?" Yi Fan saw Onijiro's solemn expression and knew that he had figured out the origin of this item, so he asked. "Yin-Yang Ghost Seal." Onijiro looked up at Yi Fan and said, "Yin-Yang Ghost Seal?" Yi Fan frowned and asked. "That's right." Onijiro nodded and said, "This item is an item from the Spring and Autumn Warring States period. It's called Yin-Yang Ghost Seal. It's said that it was created by Guiguzi." Guiguzi? Yi Fan was shocked when he heard the name. Yi Fan had read about this peerless expert in the books in his father's study. This person's surname was Wang Su, also known as Wang Chan, and his nickname was Xianwei-Zi. He was from the Spring and Autumn Warring States period. It was said that this person had 4 moles on his forehead, which formed the image of a ghost mansion. Because he lived in seclusion in the Qingxi Ghost Valley, he called himself Mr. Gigu. It was said that this person was extremely knowledgeable, and his spells were all-encompassing. The first was mathematics, the sun, the constellations, and the latitude in his palm. He was able to predict the future and examine the future, and his words were unquestionable. The second was the study of war, the 6 strategies and 3 strategies, endless changes, the deployment of troops, unpredictable as ghosts and gods. The third was the study of speech, the wide memorization of many, the clear analysis of the situation, the articulation of words, unstoppable. The fourth was the birth of the world, the cultivation of one's nature, the treatment of diseases, the taking of food to guide one's life, and the ascension from the ground. For thousands of years, the art of war revered him as a saint, the art of war revered him as their ancestor, the fortune-telling and divination revered him as their ancestor, the art of strategy revered him as the strategist sage, and the Taoist ancestor Wang Chan. One could see how high this person's ability was. Who would have thought that the yin-yang ghost seal was created by this person? Yi Fan was secretly shocked. This yin-yang ghost seal is said to be used by Mr. Giguzi to absorb pure yin ghost spirit and balance yin and yang. Looking at the yin-yang ghost seal wrapped in black light on the wooden table, Mr. Giguzi continued, during the spring and autumn warring states period, heroes rose together, wars lasted for years, corpses were everywhere, and ghosts lingered. Mr. Giguzi couldn't bear to see these wandering souls turn into resentful spirits, so he used a secret technique to create this seal, absorbing all the resentment and evil spirits of all the wandering souls into this seal. In order to prevent the resentment on the seal from causing trouble, Mr. Guzi had specially created a benevolent beast, the fire Qilin, above the seal to suppress the evil spirits in the seal. It was said that the fire Qilin contained the true spirit of the Qilin, which was the purest of yang energy. That was why it could suppress the evil spirits in the seal. If I'm not wrong, the reason why Thunder Town is constantly rumbling with thunder is because of this item. Brother Gui Mu, you mean to say that the weather above Thunder Town is related to this item? Yi Fan asked in surprise. When Bufan-san found this item, you must have seen its power, right? Onijiro asked Yi Fan. That's right. Yi Fan nodded and said, I found this item in the mountains. When I was 1,000 feet away from it, I was attacked by this seal. That's it. Onijiro nodded and said, this item has been around for thousands of years. It has absorbed an endless stream of resentful spirit. It has become sentient over time. As a result, the fire Kirin can no longer completely suppress it. Therefore, there will definitely be ghost spirits leaking out. There will also be a large number of ghosts attracted by the pure Yin ghost spirit. They will gather here and absorb it day and night. There were ghosts on the outside and ghost seals on the inside. Naturally, it would become a place of extreme Yin. Heavenly thunder was the power of extreme Yang. Where the heavenly thunder was, of course, it would not sit idly by. Thus, it was normal for heavenly thunder to roll in the sky above Thunder Roll Town. As for what attacked you, it was not the fire Kirin, but the leaked ghost spirit. When Yi Fan heard this, he was enlightened, as expected of a rising star in the Japanese cultivation world. With just a few words, he was able to clearly explain the yin-yang ghost seal's origin, use, and the strange phenomenon in Thunderous Town's Loyu village. This made Yi Fan feel enlightened, as if he had just woken up from a dream. However, there was one thing he still did not understand. Since the heavenly thunder had gathered above Thunder Town, why did it not fall and shatter the ghost seal? Why did it continue to envelop Thunder Town? When Yi Fan thought of this, he raised the question in his heart. After Onijiro heard Yi Fan's question, he immediately looked up to the sky and laughed. Brother Onijiro, why are you laughing? Yi Fan asked in return. Bufan-kun is really smart all his life, but stupid this time, Onijiro said with a smile. This yin-yang ghost seal is not an evil item. Instead, it is a secret treasure that helps the wandering souls in the world not be invaded by their own resentment. The heavens can't wait to protect a treasure like this. Why would it shatter it? But the heavenly thunder? Yi Fan frowned and asked. The heavenly thunder shrouds the seal to help the fire Kirin suppress the ghost spirits in the seal. Other than that, it also intimidates the otherworldly items that come to absorb spiritual energy, Onijiro said as he looked at the yin-yang treasure seal on the wooden table with a solemn expression. The heavenly thunder shrouds it for 1,000 years. After Yi Fan heard this, his heart was filled with emotions. He originally thought that this item was an evil treasure because of the yin wind and dense ghost qi. Now, it seemed that not only was it not an evil treasure, it was an item of righteousness that sacrificed itself for him. For some reason, Yi Fan suddenly felt that he was very similar to this yin-yang treasure seal. The demonic qi in his body was like the ghost spirit in the treasure seal that had already matured, restless and tyrannical. His nature was like the fire qilin above the treasure seal. Although his heart was more than enough, his strength was not enough. When he thought of this, Yi Fan suddenly felt a sense of familiarity with this treasure seal. But there is one thing that I don't understand. Onijiro looked at the treasure seal and frowned. It is said that the fire Kirin on the treasure seal is in the posture of standing on 10,000 ghosts. Why is it in the posture of lying down now? And from the looks of this treasure seal, the fire Kirin on it is full of spiritual energy. There is no sign of its spiritual energy declining. Why can't it suppress the ghost spirits in the seal? I really don't understand. When Yi Fan heard this, he immediately admired Onijiro. This person's knowledge was extensive, spanning from ancient to modern times. He was meticulous and could even observe such details, as if he was observing a fire at night. Brother Gui Mu, there's something you don't know. This fire qilin was indeed standing in the beginning. However, after it bit me, it became like this. Yi Fan told Brother Gui Mu everything that had happened back then. When Onijiro heard this, his face was filled with shock. His eyes stared blankly and did not recover for a long time. He looked straight at Yi Fan and then turned his head to look at the yin-yang treasure seal that was surrounded by black light. His face was filled with disbelief. Brother Gui Mu, you. Yi Fan saw Onijiro's shocked expression and did not know what had happened. Are you sure it bit your primordial spirit body? Onijiro asked Yi Fan seriously. I was inside the mountain at that time. If it wasn't my primordial spirit body, what else could it be? Yi Fan said. Bufan-kun, you've encountered great news. Onijiro said and picked up the teacup on the table and drank it in one gulp. Great news? What great news? Yi Fan asked in confusion. Do you know why this Kirin bit you? Onijiro put down the teacup in his hand and asked Yi Fan. Why? Yi Fan asked. It's recognizing you as its master. Onijiro looked at Yi Fan's confused expression and said. Recognizing you as its master? Yi Fan asked in surprise. That's right. Onijiro picked up the teapot and poured more tea into his cup as he continued. As I said earlier, this yin-yang ghost seal has absorbed resentful spirits for nearly 1,000 years and has developed spiritual intelligence. The benevolent beast fire Kirin above it is an ancient spiritual beast and is extremely rare. Onijiro put down the teapot and picked up the teacup. However, most secret treasures have their own temperament. For example, your fleeting fire sword and frost dragon sword. Even divine weapons are like this, let alone this spiritual beast fire Kirin. The reason it bit you was not to attack you, but to observe you. Observe me? Yi Fan frowned and asked, It bit me to observe me. It's very difficult to tell whether a person is good or bad, good or evil, just by looking at their physical body. Onijiro took a sip of tea and said, If one has the appearance of a celestial fairy, it's very likely that one has the heart of a venomous scorpion. If one has an ugly appearance, it's very likely that one is a very kind person. There's an old saying in your country, you can't judge a book by its cover. It's a very wise saying. Onijiro put down the teacup in his hand and continued, If you want to completely distinguish whether a person is good or bad, other than listening to their words and observing their actions, the best method is to observe their primordial spirit. The reason why the fire Qilin bit you was because it wanted to use your primordial spirit to see whether you were good or bad, beautiful or ugly. Qirins are ancient spiritual beasts and their status is not inferior to that of true dragons. They are beasts of benevolence. If it can recognize you as its master, it means that Lord Bufon is a benevolent lord, a dragon among men. It's because it received the blood of the benevolent lord's primordial spirit that this fire Qirin's spiritual power soared and restrained the ghost spirit in the seal. It's also because of the benevolent lord that it knelt down to show its loyalty. It really recognized me as its master? Yi Fan asked Onijiro. If you don't believe me, you can touch it and see. Onijiro smiled and said. When Yi Fan heard this, he glanced at the yin-yang ghost seal on the wooden table and did not dare to touch it. He was afraid that the fire Qirin would bite him again. Don't worry, it has already recognized you as its master. Otherwise, it wouldn't have followed you to the Eastern Sea. Onijiro saw through Yi Fan's concerns and said with a smile. Hearing Onijiro's confidence, Yi Fan stretched out his right hand and slowly touched the fire Qirin. Buzz! The moment Yi Fan's fingers touched the fire Qirin's dragon head, two fiery lights lit up from the fire Qirin's eyes. Ting! A large ball of red flames soared up from the fire Qirin's body. Roar! The fire Qirin, covered in flames, let out a soft roar and slowly stood up from the yin-yang ghost seal. It shook its dragon head a few times and spat out a few mouthfuls of flames. It shook the rattling scales on its body and lifted its dragon head to touch Yi Fan's palm intimately. What surprised Yi Fan was that the red flames on the fire Qirin's body did not hurt him at all. Instead, it was very warm. Seeing this, Yi Fan's face revealed a childlike smile. He had wanted to raise a dog since he was young, but his father, Yi Kong, had always disagreed. Now, he did not raise a dog, but he had a fire Qirin. Chapter 677. Let it move around? Yi Fan asked Onijiro in surprise. It can move around? Of course. Onijiro smiled. You can try if you don't believe me. When Yi Fan heard this, he lowered his head and looked at the fire Qilin that was surrounded by flames. He said tentatively, You should walk around. Roar! As soon as Yi Fan finished speaking, the fire Qirin on the yin-yang ghost seal let out an excited growl. Then, it jumped lightly from the seal and landed on the ground. Whoosh! Following a flash of fire, the palm-sized fire Qirin instantly transformed into a real Qirin that was more than 5 feet tall and 9 feet long. Its 4 hooves were stepping on fire, and its body was surrounded by flames. It raised its head and swayed its tail, and its fiery scales shone brightly under the light of the fire. Whoosh whoosh! The blazing fire Qirin shook its extremely handsome dragon head and gently breathed out a few flames. It slowly walked in front of Yi Fan and looked at Yi Fan with its large, intelligent eyes. Its gaze was extremely gentle. The blazing fire illuminated Yi Fan's incredulous face. His mouth was half open, and his eyes were wide open as he stared at the legendary ancient spiritual beast in front of him. He couldn't utter a single word. He didn't expect this spiritual beast to have the ability to transform so much. It could transform from the size of a palm to such a huge size in an instant. Whoosh, patter, patter, the blazing fire Qirin's nostrils spewed out flames that were more than half a foot long. Its 4 hooves stomped on the ground, as if it was expressing its goodwill to this new owner in front of it. Yi Fan slowly reached out his hand and gently stroked the fire Qirin's huge dragon head. His eyes were shining, and his face was filled with excitement. The fire Qirin closed its eyes and seemed to enjoy the effect. The Qirin is one of the spiritual beasts of heaven and earth. It has a revered status and is benevolent. The fire Kirin is the spiritual beast with the most tyrannical spiritual energy among all the Kirins. Lord Buffon will be like a tiger that has grown wings by obtaining this item, Onijiro said with a smile as he looked at the fire Kirin in front of him. It's a pity that this boat is too small. It's a little narrow for it, Yi Fan said as he stroked the incomparably handsome fire Kirin. Ha ha! Buffon-kun, you're underestimating it. Onijiro immediately laughed when he heard Yi Fan's words. This Fei's spiritual power is extremely high and it's good at transformation. If it wants to be big, it'll be big. If it wants to be small, it'll be small. If it wants to be big, it'll be big. If it wants to be small, it'll be small. If it wants to be big, it'll be big. If it wants to be small, it'll be small. If it wants to be big, it'll be big. If it wants to be small, it'll be small. When Yi Fan heard this, he was shocked once again. This fire Kirin's true spirit is already so powerful and domineering. If it finds a physical body in the future, its spirit and body will become one. It's hard to imagine how powerful it will be, Onijiro said with emotion. Brother Guemu, you mean to say that the fire Kirin hasn't found a physical body yet? Yi Fan turned to look at Onijiro and asked in surprise. I just told you that Mr. Gueguzi used the fire Kirin's true spirit and inner core to suppress the resentment and ghostly spirit within the ghost seal, Onijiro said to Yi Fan. As for the location of the fire Kirin's true body, I'm sure only Senior Gueguzi and the fire Kirin would know the exact location. Brother, you mean that Gueguzi didn't forcibly seal the fire Kirin's true spirit and inner core within the ghost seal? Yi Fan asked Onijiro. Senior Gueguzi is a sage. Why would he do something so barbaric? Onijiro said. I think that Senior Gueguzi must have a deep relationship with this fire Kirin. The two of them must have reached some kind of agreement that caused the fire Kirin's true spirit to leave its body and its inner core to reside within the ghost seal to suppress the ghostly spirit. You must know that this is a great deed of merit. When the deed is done, this spirit beast will definitely ascend to the upper realm. Yi Fan nodded after hearing this. The fire Kirin's fate was becoming more and more similar to his. Both of them were accumulating merit. He didn't know if the fire Qilin was doing this for his wife. As Yi Fan thought about this, he stroked the fire Kirin as if it was an old friend that he hadn't seen in years. Baihu jumped onto Yi Fan's shoulder and looked curiously at the huge creature covered in fire. The fire Kirin sensed the spirit energy in Xiao Zhao's body and immediately raised its head. It opened its fiery lion eyes and looked warily at Baihu. Baihu didn't back down. She stared at the fire Kirin with her clear eyes without blinking. Fire Kirin, this is Xiao Zhao. She's my little sister, Yi Fan said to the fire Kirin as he turned his head to Baihu on his shoulder. Xiao Zhao, the fire Kirin is one of us from now on. The two of you must get along well. Don't fight with each other, understand? As Yi Fan spoke, he looked at the fire Kirin again. Seeing that Baihu was its new master's little sister, the fire Kirin's eyes softened. It was no longer wary. Phew, the fire Qilin raised its dragon neck and lowered its head, using its pair of dragon horns to lightly touch the white fox. Baihu, who was standing on Yi Fan's shoulder, reached out her front paw and patted the fire Kirin's forehead in return. This fire Kirin probably hasn't eaten for 1,000 years. Buffon-kun can feed it something, Onijiro said to Yi Fan. This Fei is a symbol of benevolence. It only eats immortal herbs and other things. Buffon-kun can feed it some fresh fruits or top-grade herbs. When Yi Fan heard this, he nodded. Xiao Zhao, bring the fire Kirin to eat something, Yi Fan said to Baihu, who was on his shoulder. When the white fox heard this, it jumped down from Yi Fan's shoulder and landed on the ground. It looked back at the fire Kirin, then trotted downstairs to the storage cabin. The storage cabin was filled with all kinds of fresh fruits and vegetables. Ninjas would come to replenish it every day. The fire Kirin glanced at Yi Fan as if it was asking for Yi Fan's permission. Go on, eat more, Yi Fan said with a smile as he patted the Fire Kirin's head. The Fire Qilin nodded and followed the white fox down the stairs with its 4 flaming hooves. After the Fire Kirin left, Yi Fan sat down across from Onijiro and asked, "If the Fire Kirin leaves the ghost seal, aren't you afraid that the spirits in the ghost seal won't be restrained?" "If it were any other time, the Fire Kirin would never leave the ghost seal," Onijiro said with a smile. "But it's different now. First of all, the Fire Kirin has a benevolent master, and its spiritual power has greatly increased. The spirits in the ghost seal won't dare to act rashly. Second of all, Bufan Kuan has passed the heavenly tribulation and has the power of thunder in his body, which is the nemesis of these spirits. Therefore, the Fire Kirin will naturally dare to move around without worry." Yi Fan suddenly understood and nodded slightly. "Bufan Kuan, aren't you curious about what I went out to do this time?" Onijiro asked Yi Fan with a smile as he picked up his teacup and drank some tea. "Why, Brother Gui Mu, do you have good news about the 9 cauldrons?" Yi Fan picked up the teapot and smiled as he refilled Onijiro's tea. "No, no," Onijiro shook his head and smiled. "Brother Yagi and I went out this time, and it has nothing to do with the 9 cauldrons." "Then what is it?" Yi Fan put down the teapot and asked. "Actually, it's nothing," Onijiro said with a smile. "This time, we didn't go out to perform any mission. Naturally, it's not a secret. It doesn't hurt to tell Bufan Kuan." "Let's hear it," Yi Fan said with a smile. "This time, Brother Yagi and I went overseas to look for a meteorite that fell into a local river. It was a good job." Onijiro smiled. "I heard that Sato Kawaki and Fujita Tsuyoshi, Yokoyama Yugo and Kamehameha were also sent to other places to search for 2 large meteorites that fell in the local area decades ago." "Looking for meteorites?" Yi Fan frowned when he heard that. He came from a family of weaponsmiths, so he knew the role of meteorites better than anyone else. Meteorites often contained extraterrestrial iron, which was extremely difficult to obtain. It was an important raw material for making magical weapons. Matsumoto Takeyoshi was fine, so why did he suddenly want to make weapons? Didn't he have one of the 3 magical weapons of Japan, the Sword of Kusanagi? Why did he want to make weapons? All in all, this was definitely not a good thing. "I wonder if Bufan Kuan still remembers Kazuken Sato?" Onijiro asked Yi Fan with a smile. "Kazuken Sato? The blacksmith who is known as the King of Swords in Japan?" Yi Fan asked. "As far as I know, after Mr. Sato stayed on the battleship for a night, he was taken away by a small boat. As for where he went, I don't know," Onijiro said. "Onijiro, you mean?" Yi Fan frowned and looked at Onijiro after hearing Onijiro's words. A genius blacksmith and extraterrestrial iron. Even a stupid person could guess what was going on. Onijiro nodded slowly. Yi Fan didn't say anything. Although he didn't see with his own eyes how powerful the saber made by Kazuken Sato was, judging from Matsumoto Takeyoshi's respectful attitude and the respectful attitude of the masters at that time, the saber made by this person was definitely not ordinary. "When you fought with Ryuno Tsukyagyu, did you see the saber in Yamada Shingo's hand?" Onijiro asked Yi Fan, who was silent. Yi Fan looked up at Onijiro and nodded slowly. Bufan Kuan is the eldest grandson of the famous Yi family. "Naturally, you can say that you are an expert in judging weapons," Onijiro said to Yi Fan. "In your opinion, what do you think of this saber?" "To be honest, this saber's combat power is rare," Yi Fan said calmly as he recalled the scene when Mr. Bai used the saber. "To be able to activate the saber energy to such an extent, Yamada Shingo is really not an ordinary master." Yi Fan remembered the scene very clearly. In the face of dozens of fiery red iron cannonballs fired at the same time, the man in white only waved his saber gently. The saber arc, which was more than 100 feet long, cut all the iron cannonballs in an instant. The shock wave produced even shook the entire sea, creating huge ripples. To tell you the truth, the saber in his hand is a peerless divine weapon made by Kazuken Sato when he was 60 years old, Sky Breaker. Onijiro said to Yi Fan, and as far as I know, when Yamada Shingo used the saber, he didn't activate the saber energy at all. What you saw was just a simple swing of the saber. Onijiro's words made Yi Fan, who had been calm a moment ago, widen his eyes in disbelief. Sky Breaker was Kazuken Sato's last saber. It was rumored that this saber was 4 feet long and was as white as snow. There was no pattern on it, except for a golden bell inlaid on the hilt. It was said that every time it fought with someone, this golden bell would make a crisp sound that shook one's soul. After the opponent heard this sound, they would instantly become dizzy and deaf. Yi Fan originally thought that this saber only contained witchcraft and relied on witchcraft to harm people. He never expected that this saber could release such a domineering saber energy without being activated. He also did not expect this saber to be in the hands of the man in white. He could release such a majestic saber energy without activating it with spiritual power. If he fully activated it, wouldn't the saber energy be like a mountain? And that wasn't even counting the soul-crushing golden bell. Chapter 678. After sending off Onijiro, it was already half an hour later. Buffon-kun, please wait a moment. I shall take my leave now, Onijiro said in the cabin and disappeared into thin air. In the cabin, only Yi Fan was left with a solemn expression. Obviously, Matsumoto Takeyoshi had sent people to look for meteorites to forge divine weapons. Moreover, he wanted a lot of them. Just the meteorite that Onijiro and Bamu Chongqing found weighed a few hundred kilograms. It was enough to forge at least dozens of battle swords. This did not include the meteorite found by Sato Kawachi, Fujita Tsuyoshi, Kamehameha, and Yokoyama Yugo. It seemed that Matsumoto Takeyoshi wanted the sword Emperor Sato to forge a large number of peerless battle swords. As for the people who were going to equip these high-grade divine weapons, they must be the most loyal subordinates of Matsumoto Takeyoshi. Thinking of this, Yi Fan's expression became more and more solemn. He vaguely guessed Matsumoto Takeyoshi's intention. If he guessed correctly, the experts who were going to equip this batch of top-grade battle swords were most likely the mysterious army that Matsumoto Takeyoshi regarded as one of his trump cards, the Black Feather Army. He heard from Akatsuki that this was a mysterious army made up of hundreds of top-grade experts. There were hundreds of them, and every one of them was a one-in-a-million expert. Moreover, they were extremely loyal to Matsumoto Takeyoshi. In the beginning, Yi Fan did not put these people in his eyes. However, when he knew that his wife's teacher, Ito Fumio, and the white-robed man, Yamada Shingo, were from the Black Feather Army, he did not dare to underestimate this mysterious army anymore. He had seen Ito Fumio's 1,000 slaughter with his own eyes. With one slash, he was invincible. He was also clear about the abilities of the white-robed man, Yamada Shingo. Whether it was his movement technique or his cultivation, it was definitely not something that an ordinary person could imagine. It was said that the two of them were known as the Black Feathers duo in the Japanese ninja world. Ever since they became famous, the two of them had never met a worthy opponent. From this, it could be inferred that the combat strength of the Black Feather Troop was unimaginably strong. If this army was equipped with the top-notch blades forged by the Blade Emperor Sato, no other army would be able to withstand the assault of this army. It seemed that he had to find a chance to inform the Crown Prince of this news. He made up his mind that after Qi Yao returned to the Eastern Sea, he would make a trip to the capital. Firstly, he would inform the Crown Prince of this military plan so that he could be prepared. Secondly, he could bring the young man he met on the road to the Crown Prince and clear the injustice of his father, Wu Shilin. When Yi Fan thought of this, he nodded slowly and turned to go downstairs. Baihu had been downstairs for an hour with the fire Kirin, but she still hadn't come back up. This made him feel a little strange. However, when he came to the door of the storage room and saw the scene inside, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He saw the fire Kirin, who was covered in flames, eating all kinds of fruits and fresh vegetables in the storage room. The storage room, which was originally full, was now more than half eaten by the fire Kirin. Apart from rice, noodles, and meat, all the vegetables and fruits were to the fire Kirin's liking. Even the Ganoderma lucidum, ginseng, and other precious medicinal herbs prepared for Xiao Zhao had been eaten by the fire Kirin. Baihu stood to the side and stared blankly at the fire Kirin, listening to the crunching sounds of the fire Kirin's chewing, and swallowed a mouthful of saliva. It felt that it had a big appetite, but compared to the fire Kirin, its appetite was not enough to fill the gaps between the fire Kirin's teeth. Baihu turned its head to Yi Fan with an innocent look. This fire Kirin has a big appetite, and it hasn't eaten for 1,000 years. Of course, it's hungry, Yi Fan said to Baihu with a smile. The white fox nodded its head, not fully understanding. It didn't know whether the fire Kirin had eaten for 1,000 years or not, but it knew that this guy covered in flames had a big appetite. Otherwise, it wouldn't have eaten so much. After sensing Yi Fan's presence, the fire Kirin, who was eating with its head lowered, immediately turned its head to look at Yi Fan while chewing a big apple. Eat as much as you want, Yi Fan said to the fire Kirin with a smile. I'll ask them to send more tomorrow and fill up the other cabin. After hearing that, the fire Kirin nodded a few times and continued to eat. Xiao Zhao, accompany it to eat. After it's done, take it to drink some water, Yi Fan said to Baihu. He wanted the two of them to get to know each other as soon as possible. After hearing that, Baihu nodded. Yi Fan smiled and turned to go upstairs. Although it was already late at night, Yi Fan was not sleepy at all. It had been 5 to 6 days since the end of the demon-slaying conference. Back then, Tenmoni had told him that Umoji would be fine after 3 to 5 days of recovery in the blood demon token. Although Yi Fan had been busy with various matters, he had never forgotten what Umoji had done for him. In the Golden Buddha treasure bowl, this woman from his previous life had willingly used her body to block the light of Buddha in order to protect him. Her feelings for him were no less than Akatsuki's. In the past few days, he had been wanting to enter the blood demon token with his primordial spirit body to see her, but he was afraid that it would affect her recovery. Now that it was time for her to recover, he was anxious to know how Umoji had recovered. Thinking of this, Yi Fan sat cross-legged on the futon and activated the demon spirit. His primordial spirit came out of his body. Buzz, a layer of blood-red light began to appear around Yi Fan's body. Whoosh, a red light came out from between Yi Fan's eyebrows and slowly flew into the blood demon token in his arms. Since becoming a demon, this was the first time Yi Fan had entered the blood demon token with his primordial spirit body. What surprised him was that there was actually an emerald palace in the blood devil token. It was exactly the same as the palace in the demon realm. Around the palace, ancient trees towered into the sky, and there were countless strange flowers and grasses. There was a wide emerald road that led to the Emerald Palace. What surprised Yi Fan even more was that there were 2 beautiful palace maids guarding the entrance of the Emerald Palace. He hesitated for a moment, then slowly walked forward. Seeing Yi Fan approaching, the 2 beautiful palace maids lowered their heads and bowed to Yi Fan. "Greetings, Demon King. This is..." Yi Fan frowned and asked the 2 palace maids. "Demon King, this is the spirit realm of the blood demon token." One of the palace maids answered Yi Fan with a sweet voice. "The blood demon spirit realm?" Yi Fan asked. "Yes, Demon King." The palace maid answered again. "Is Moji inside now?" Yi Fan asked. "Demon King, Guardian Yu is now recuperating inside." The palace maid answered. "All right, you can all get up," Yi Fan nodded and said after hearing them. "Thank you, Demon King." The 2 palace maids thanked him and slowly got up. Yi Fan walked in slowly. Along the way, There were several groups of palace maids who bowed to Yi Fan one after another. Yi Fan asked them to rise and be excused. The appearance of these palace maids made Yi Fan feel a little confused. He didn't understand why the Emerald Palace was in the Blood Demon token, and he didn't understand where these palace maids came from. Could it be that these palace maids were sent by Tenmoni from the demon realm? With a head full of questions, Yi Fan came to the door of the room on the top floor of the Emerald Palace. The two palace maids guarding the door immediately prepared to bow when they saw Yi Fan. Yi Fan put his index finger to his mouth, indicating for them not to make a sound. The two palace maids understood tacitly and stood with their hands down, no longer making a sound. Whoosh! Yi Fan thought of something and a red light flashed around his body. With a whoosh, he passed through the door. In the room, Yumoji, who was wearing white pajamas, was lying quietly on the bed. Her eyes were closed, her face was pale, and her long black hair was scattered around her. Even so, it still couldn't conceal her flawless and exquisite face and her pure and clean temperament. 2 streaks of tears had not completely disappeared from the corner of her eyes. Yi Fan, who wanted to give Yumoji a surprise, felt his heart ache when he saw this. He frowned. He didn't expect Yumoji's injuries to be so severe. Moji! Yi Fan called out Yumoji's name and quickly walked to the bed. Yumoji's breathing was heavy, and she didn't respond to Yi Fan's call. Seeing this, Yi Fan immediately formed a sword finger with his right hand, activated the heavenly demon power, and gently tapped between Yumoji's eyebrows. Buzz! Following that, the red light on Yi Fan's fingertip shone brightly and a few streaks of blood-red light entered between Yumoji's eyebrows. He was unblocking the spiritual meridians in Yumoji's body. Cough! 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 After a while, the pale-faced Yumoji started to cough violently. Moji! Moji! Yi Fan called out Yumoji's name. Yumoji slowly opened her beautiful eyes. Through the haze, Yumoji saw Yi Fan's anxious face. Yi Fan! Yumoji called out weakly. Her voice was filled with joy. Yi Fan nodded heavily. You're still alive? Yumoji struggled to lift half of her body and shouted happily. In her mind, she only remembered that Tenmoni pulled her out from the Golden Buddha treasure bowl. She didn't remember anything else. Yi Fan's eyes reddened and he nodded again. Phew! Seeing Yi Fan nod, Yumoji suddenly mustered up the strength and sat up on the jade bed. She hugged Yi Fan, who was sitting beside the bed. I thought you were dead. Yumoji sobbed as she hugged Yi Fan tightly. Aren't I alive and well? Yi Fan patted Yumoji's back as he blinked his eyes and smiled. He was afraid that his tears would flow out. Yes. Yumoji nodded like a child. Your injuries haven't healed yet, quickly lie down. Yi Fan held Yumoji's shoulder and helped her lie down. He then tucked her in. Yumoji's eyes were filled with tears, but her face was full of smiles. In her opinion, Yi Fan being alive was more worth being happy about than anything else. How did you get hurt so badly? Yi Fan asked as he reached out and brushed Yumoji's hair behind her ear. Although the Buddha light was powerful, Yumoji was the leader of the demon realm's 4 guardians. She shouldn't have been injured so badly. Moreover, the blood demon token was filled with demon spirits. Even if Yumoji couldn't fully recover in 4 to 5 days, she should be able to walk freely. You have a physical body, but I don't, Yumoji said to Yi Fan with a pale face. As soon as she said that, Yi Fan came to a realization. Within the golden Buddha light, he could temporarily resist the Buddha light with his physical body, but Yumoji couldn't because she didn't have a physical body. She had to rely on her primordial spirit to resist the Buddha light's corrosion. Even so, Yumoji used her primordial spirit to block most of the Buddha light for him. She almost lost her life. Because of that, she was injured so badly. Thinking of this, Yi Fan couldn't hold it in any longer. He closed his eyes and 2 streams of tears flowed down his face. Chapter 679. I'm fine. You don't have to worry about me. Seeing Yi Fan's tears, Yumoji said weakly on the jade bed. Yi Fan wiped away his tears and took out a palm-sized object wrapped in green leaves from his chest. The green leaves that wrapped around it had already turned a little yellow, and a few rays of red light were faintly shooting out from within. As soon as the item was taken out, a strange fragrance filled the room. Yi Fan slowly peeled away the dried leaves that were wrapped around it. Whoosh! More than 10 rays of red light shot out from the item. Within the leaves on Yi Fan's palm, there were 2 red fruits the size of walnuts. The fruits were shaped like skulls and were emitting red light. They were filled with devil spirit. Night demon fruit. Yumoji, who was lying on the jade bed, exclaimed when she saw the fruit. Back when I was demonized in Night Demon Peak, I plucked 3 night demon fruit. I ate one to recover my strength, but I couldn't bear to eat the other 2. Yi Fan looked at the dazzling red night demon fruit in his hand and said gently to Yumoji, now that you don't have enough devil spirit, your primordial spirit is damaged, and your body is heavily injured, this night demon fruit can help you recover your spirit chi. These 2 night demon fruits were originally kept by Yi Fan for Xiao Zhao. However, because the fruit contained devil spirits, Yi Fan did not dare to give it to Xiao Zhao. He was afraid that the devil spirits would affect Xiao Zhao's mind. Now that he had obtained the 100-herb pellet from Nieqing, there was no need for him to worry about Xiao Zhao regaining her human body. Furthermore, Yumoji had been severely injured in order to protect him from the Buddha light. Using these 2 demon fruits to heal Yumoji's demon spirit was the best option. This night demon fruit takes 100 years to bloom, 100 years to bear fruit, and 100 years to mature. It's extremely rare. You should keep it with you in case you need it in the future. Yumoji said to Yi Fan. This item was prepared by the demon ancestor for those who had successfully climbed to the top of the Night Demon Peak. Each person could only consume 3 pills. If they wanted to consume more, they had to obtain the permission of the Demon Realm's sovereign, Tenmoni. This thing is of no use to me now, Yi Fan said. Besides, if I want it, I can go to the Night Demon Peak to pick it. You don't know this, but when I climbed Night Demon Peak, I ate 3 of them, Yumoji said to Yi Fan. There is a rule in the Demon Realm. If you want to eat more than 1 Night Demon fruit, you have to get permission from the Demon Lord. So, I am now the king of the Devil World. Why? I don't even have the right to give the Devil King's wife 2 Night Devil fruits? Yi Fan smiled and asked Yumoji. Yumoji was stunned at first, then her face turned red. You are the Demon King, of course you have the right, but… Yumoji did not finish her sentence. Although Yi Fan had promised to give her the title of the Devil King's wife in the future, the 2 of them were still master and servant. Why are there so many buts? Come, I'll feed you, Yi Fan said as he reached out and picked up a night demon fruit from his palm and brought it to Yumoji's mouth. Yumoji looked at Yi Fan's gentle eyes and hesitated for a moment. Then, she opened her red lips and swallowed it. Buzz! As the night demon fruit that contained the essence of the demon spirit entered Yumoji's body, a layer of dazzling red light instantly rose around her body. Within the red light, Yumoji's face gradually regained its color and her eyes began to regain their vigor. Earlier, Yi Fan had opened up her spiritual meridians. Now that she had obtained the demon spirit from the night demon fruit, Yumoji naturally recovered very quickly. After the red light dissipated, Yi Fan placed his hand on Yumoji's wrist and began to take her pulse. Yumoji blushed and did not move. After a long time, a smile appeared on Yi Fan's face. Your demon spirit has recovered by 60%. Yi Fan let go of Yumoji's wrist and said softly, At this time tomorrow, take another night demon fruit and you'll be completely healed. Yumoji's body was currently weak and it was best to take it slowly. She could not take 2 night demon fruits in a row. Otherwise, the sudden increase in her demon spirit would harm her spiritual meridians. As Yi Fan spoke, he placed the other night demon fruit in his hand beside Yumoji's pillow. Okay, Yumoji looked at Yi Fan and nodded obediently. Don't do anything stupid next time, Yi Fan tucked Yumoji in and said, It was so dangerous. You almost lost your life. Yumoji, who was lying on the jade bed, smiled in relief and did not say anything. By the way, what's with this jade palace? Why are there palace maids here? Yifan asked Yumoji. This is the spirit realm of the blood demon token. It's full of spirit power, Yumoji explained to Yifan. There's a benefit to being here. As long as you think of something, you will get it. Of course, everything here is created by the demon spirit. It's not real. You mean to say that the Jade Palace and the Palace Maids were all created by you using your mind? Yifan asked in shock. When I was sent here by the Demon Lord, my consciousness was already blurred. How could I still have the ability to create this Jade Palace? Yumoji said. It seems that Brother Mo prepared everything for you, Yifan said as he looked around at the furnishings. Yumoji nodded. It's getting late. I have to return to the human realm. There are many things waiting for me there, Yifan said to Yumoji. Rest well in the blood demon token. If you need anything, just tell the palace maids. Seeing that Yifan was about to leave, Yumoji sat up on the bed and asked anxiously, You're leaving now? Don't worry. I'll come see you tomorrow night. Yifan smiled and held Yumoji's shoulder, letting her lie back down on the bed. Really? You'll come see me tomorrow night? Yumoji stared at Yifan with her beautiful eyes. When did I lie to you? Yifan smiled. Yumoji smiled and did not say anything. Just as Yifan said, he never went back on his words. Have a good rest. I'm leaving, Yifan said gently. He then slowly turned around and disappeared with a whoosh. When Yifan opened his eyes again, the sky was already bright. Beside him, Baihu was curled up and sleeping soundly. On the wooden table, the fire Kirin had shrunk back to the size of a palm and was lying on the ghost seal as if it had not moved at all. Yifan slowly stood up and reached out to take a blanket. He then gently covered the white fox's body with it. In order to take care of the fire Kirin, it did not sleep for most of the night. After settling Baihu down, Yifan gently closed the cabin door and went to the deck. At this time, the East Sea's surface was sparkling. A red sun was rising above the East Sea. It was very beautiful. The sea breeze blew, and Yifan suddenly felt relaxed. He stretched his back and moved his body that had been sitting cross-legged for most of the night. Whoosh, just as he was stretching his legs, a streak of black starlight flew towards him from the distant sky. It was Qi Yao. Yifan narrowed his eyes. A thought flashed in his mind, and he activated his agility skill. Then, he transformed into a bright white star with a schwa sound. He rose from the deck of the ship and soared high into the sky. Then, he rapidly flew in the direction of the black light. At this time, the black star was more than 300 li away from Matsumoto Takayoshi's warship. The person inside the black star was none other than the white-robed Qi Yao. Seeing the white star coming toward him, Qi Yao, who was dressed like a scholar, smiled and hovered in the air. Whoosh, the white star arrived in an instant and hovered in front of Qi Yao. Brother Yi, you've woken up so early. You even came all the way here to pick me up. I feel a little apologetic, said General Qi with a smile as he looked at Yifan, who was hovering in the air. Where did you go? Yifan went straight to the point and asked the demon Qi. What? Brother Yi came all the way here just to ask me this? Qi Yao asked with a smile. You didn't forget our agreement, did you? Yifan reminded Qi Yao. How could I? Qi Yao smiled. Then get straight to the point. I'm not in the mood to joke around with you. Yifan looked at Qi Yao calmly and revealed an evil smile. Seeing Yifan's evil smile, Qi Yao's smile disappeared. Every time Yifan showed this expression, nothing good would happen. Although his yin-yang dual life technique had reached the initial stage and its power was shocking, it was still not on the same level as Yifan, who had mastered the ultimate skill and had gone through the heavenly tribulation. At most, he could retreat unscathed before Yifan. Before he mastered the yin-yang dual birth technique, He could not have any conflict with Yi Fan. I'm afraid you won't believe me. Qi Yao said to Yi Fan, I went overseas a few days ago to help Matsumoto Takeyoshi find a meteorite. Meteorite? Another meteorite? Yi Fan frowned when he heard that. What? You don't believe me? Qi Yao saw Yi Fan frown and thought that Yi Fan was doubting him. Yi Fan looked up at Qi Yao and did not say anything. Then I'll let you see, Qi Yao said and pulled a black bag from his waist. The bag was not big, only about half a foot long. The word swastika was embroidered on it with golden silk thread and a golden rope was wrapped around the opening. It looked extremely beautiful. Qi Yao took the bag out and threw it into the air. Whoosh, the black bag in the air shook and instantly became 10 feet long. After reciting an incantation, Qi Yao formed a hand seal and pointed at the bag in the air, shouting, Open! Whoosh! Qi Yao had just finished speaking when the golden rope of the black bag in the air suddenly loosened and the bag opened. Out! Qi Yao changed the gesture and shouted again. As Qi Yao changed the gesture, the black bag slowly changed direction. The bottom of the bag was facing the sky and the mouth was facing down. Whoosh! A huge meteorite slowly flew out of the black bag and hovered in the air. The meteorite was 5 feet long and had an irregular shape. It was dark and shiny and emitted a strange luster. When Yi Fan saw it, his frown deepened. Judging from the luster of this meteorite in front of him, it was a rare piece of top-grade meteorite iron. Although the meteorite was only 5 feet long, it weighed thousands of pounds. This meteorite was not only very hard but also very tough. It was very suitable to be used to make weapons. Chapter 680. How is it? Do you believe me now? Qi Yao said to Yi Fan as he changed his hand seals. As Qi Yao's hand seals continued to change, the huge meteorite floating in midair was slowly sucked into the golden silk bag. Whoosh! The golden silk bag quickly shrank back to its original size and fell into Qi Yao's hands. Obviously, his golden silk bag was a treasure. Although it didn't look like much from the outside, there was something else inside. Why would he give you such a simple mission? Yi Fan frowned and asked Qi Yao. Simple? Humph! Qi Yao sneered as he put the golden silk bag back on his waist. You should know better than me how shrewd Matsumoto Takeyoshi is. If it was so easy to retrieve this meteorite, Matsumoto Takeyoshi would have sent his ninjas to retrieve it. Why would he send me? What do you mean by that? Yi Fan asked Qi Yao. Just for this piece of broken rock, I killed 7 experts from the martial arts world of other countries in a row and destroyed almost half of a city before I was able to get my hands on it. And you say it's simple? Qi Yao looked at Yi Fan and said, Did you snatch this thing? Yi Fan frowned and asked, If I didn't snatch it, then did someone give it to me as a gift? Qi Yao smiled and said, There were more than a dozen experts who coveted this thing. They were from Tibet, Korea, the Western regions, and even Europe. There were men and women, old and young. There were all kinds of people, but I sent them all away. If they weren't dead, they were injured. Yi Fan was not surprised by Qi Yao's words. A dozen caddies of high-quality meteorite iron was already worth tens of thousands of gold. It was something that could only be found by chance, not to mention this high-quality meteorite that weighed 1,000 caddies. For an expert, owning this meteorite not only meant wealth and glory, it also meant that they would be invincible with a divine weapon in hand. Don't just talk about me. What news do you have from your side? Qi Yao asked Yi Fan. No. Yi Fan's answer was straightforward. If there's no news, we'd better meet less. Otherwise, Matsumoto Takeyoshi will be suspicious, Qi Yao said. If there's news, I'll look for you, Qi Yao said. Then, she flicked her sleeve and turned into a black star. She flashed past Yi Fan and rushed towards the warship. Phew! The strong wind generated by Qi Yao's swift and fierce movements blew Yi Fan's black robe high into the air, and then it slowly fell down. Yi Fan slowly turned around and looked at the rapidly disappearing black starlight with a solemn expression. After a long time, his figure flashed and instantly vanished. A day passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, the sun had set in the west and the stars were shining brightly in the sky. During this day, Yi Fan had mapped the patterns of the divine cauldrons in his mind onto the scroll. Now, he had obtained 4 divine cauldrons. They were the Qingzhou cauldron obtained from the Fire Dragon Town, the Jingzhou cauldron obtained from the Sisui River, the Liangzhou cauldron obtained from the Heavenly Lake, and the Yongzhou cauldron that he was guarding in the Mount Everest. Among the 9 cauldrons, he had obtained 4. In addition, the divine cauldron in the East Sea would be found soon. He had already searched more than half of the entire East Sea. With his current cultivation, as long as he encountered another stormy night, he would definitely find traces of the divine cauldron. At that time, he would obtain the patterns of the 5 divine cauldrons. However, even so, Yi Fan was still not happy. The divine cauldron patterns on the scroll were intricate and extremely dense. There were mountains, rivers, ancient words, celestial talismans, flowing clouds, flames, birds, beasts, and even mountain spirits, demons, and monsters. In addition to these, there were also a large number of mysterious and exquisite patterns engraved on the cauldron. They were densely packed and intertwined with each other, causing people to be unable to understand their meaning. Yi Fan had only looked at it for an hour, but he already felt dizzy and upset. He even stimulated his own endless desires. He quickly rolled up the scroll and put it aside. He pinched the space between his eyebrows to calm himself down as soon as possible. It seemed like it was indeed as Qingchenzi had said at that time. There was an ancient array hidden in the patterns, and once he was enchanted, he would go berserk and lose his mind. In serious cases, he would be mentally exhausted and lose his life on the spot. He was already affected by the evil qi and the demonic power in his body. If he were to fall into the ancient array in the divine cauldron patterns, the consequences would be unimaginable. Everything should wait until all 9 cauldron patterns were gathered. Yi Fan pinched the space between his eyebrows as he thought to himself, "Phew." Just as Yi Fan was thinking, a light sound of a figure landing on the ground came from outside the cabin. After hearing this sound, Yi Fan immediately frowned. The aura of the person outside the door was very stable. His breathing was very smooth, and there was no sense of stagnation. Just from the sound of it, one could tell that he was an expert, and a peerless expert. It was very obvious that the light sound of landing was purposely made by this person. His purpose was to make Yi Fan let down his guard. Yi Fan already knew the identity of this expert outside the cabin. This person was none other than the solitary and taciturn expert, Funakoshi Shinichi. Why was he here? Yi Fan was puzzled. One must know that Funakoshi Shinichi and the other experts did not talk much, let alone him. Other than nodding to each other in public, the two of them had almost never spoken. Knock, 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 a light and rhythmic knocking sound came from the door. Yi Fan stood up from the praying mat and flew downstairs to the door. Yi Fan still respected Funakoshi Shinichi from the bottom of his heart. There were 3 reasons. First, this person had always been a man of few words. He did not like to fight for fame and fortune. When he was young, he lived alone on a small island. During the day, he would go out to sea to fish, and at night, he would weave a net and sleep. Moreover, whether it was the off-season or the peak season, whether it was windy or rainy, he would only catch 2 basins of fish. One basin was used to fill his stomach, and the other basin was used to exchange for wine. He lived on the island for 10 years. Second, this person's cultivation was very high. He was kind-hearted and empathized with the people. During the drought, this person caught 2 whales that weighed more than 100,000 kilograms from the sea and saved thousands of people who were about to starve to death. Thirdly, and this was also what Yi Fan valued the most, that this person was loyal and righteous. After his wife fell into the sea, this person did not choose to continue marrying a virtuous wife. Instead, He resolutely entered the mountain to cultivate. After Matsumoto Takeyoshi helped him find his wife's remains, he cried in front of his wife's grave for a day and a night. Everyone was moved. It was also because he was indebted to Matsumoto Takeyoshi that this person came all the way to the great Ming dynasty to help Matsumoto Takeyoshi find the 9 cauldrons. Originally, Yi Fan was not interested in this person. However, after hearing about this person's deeds from Akatsuki, Yi Fan could not help but respect Funakoshi Shinichi. This person was able to endure loneliness. His cultivation was very high, but he loved the people as if they were his own children. He was a man of few words, but he was loyal and loyal. How could Yi Fan not treat such a person with respect? Walla Yi Fan, who came to the cabin door, tidied up his clothes and opened the cabin door. Outside the cabin, Funakoshi Shinichi was wearing a gray cloak and white sock. He had an apologetic expression on his face. Funakoshi has come rashly and disturbed Mr. Yi. Funakoshi Shinichi, who had short hair and a buzz cut, bowed to Yi Fan politely as he spoke to Yi Fan in a deep voice. Mr. Funakoshi is too polite. What a rare guest. Please come in. Yi Fan first nodded to Funakoshi Shinichi in return. Then, he extended his hand to invite Funakoshi Shinichi into the cabin. Sorry for the trouble, Mr. Yi. Funakoshi Shinichi nodded to Yi Fan politely again. Then, he bowed and walked in. Mr. Funakoshi, please come upstairs. Yi Fan closed the cabin door and extended his hand to invite Funakoshi Shinichi upstairs. Thank you. Funakoshi Shinichi thanked him and walked upstairs. Yi Fan followed closely behind him. After entering the cabin on the 2nd floor, Yi Fan invited Funakoshi Shinichi to sit on the futon and poured a cup of hot tea for him. Then, he sat in front of Funakoshi Shinichi. When Baihu saw that there was a guest, she immediately ran to the stove and obediently laid down. Good tea. Funakoshi Shinichi took a sip of the tea and complimented. This tea was sent by Matsumoto Takeyoshi last time. It's authentic Fujian Dahongpo. Yi Fan smiled and said, If Mr. Funakoshi likes it, you can bring a few bags back to try. Mr. Yi, aren't you curious as to why I came here uninvited? Funakoshi Shinichi smiled as he put the teacup on the wooden table. He looked at Yi Fan and asked, It's my honor that Mr. Funakoshi is here to drink tea. Yi Fan picked up the teapot and poured himself a cup of tea. As for why you are here, if you want to tell me, you will. There's no need for me to ask. As Yi Fan spoke, he smiled and took a sip of tea. Ha ha ha, hearing Yi Fan's words, Funakoshi Shinichi looked up and laughed. Mr. Yi is really different. You're so straightforward. Funakoshi Shinichi smiled. Yi Fan smiled. There's an old saying in the Central Plains, you don't visit a temple without a reason. Funakoshi Shinichi said to Yi Fan, I came here tonight because I want to ask Mr. Yi for help. Mr. Funakoshi, please go ahead. Yi Fan went straight to the point and said, As long as I can do it, I will do my best. Funakoshi Shinichi paused for a moment before he smiled and said, Mr. Yi, you haven't even finished listening to me yet. How can you agree so quickly? Aren't you afraid that I'll make things difficult for you? Mr. Funakoshi is an honest and upright person. How could you do such a despicable thing? Yi Fan put down his teacup and smiled at Funakoshi Shinichi. Funakoshi is just a martial artist. Mr. Yi, you overestimate me. Funakoshi Shinichi smiled and said, As the saying goes, justice is in everyone's heart. What kind of person Mr. Funakoshi is? Everyone has their own opinion. Yi Fan smiled. Funakoshi Shinichi smiled and didn't say anything. What do you want me to help with? I'm all ears. Yi Fan said. To be honest, Mr. Yi, I came here because I want to invite Mr. Yi to the Ming Dynasty Palace. Funakoshi Shinichi calmly said to Yi Fan. The Ming Dynasty Palace? Yi Fan frowned. Mr. Funakoshi means, Mr. Yi, Please tell the Ming Dynasty's crown prince that Matsumoto Takeyoshi is secretly building a large number of high-quality weapons. Funakoshi Shinichi leaned closer to Yi Fan and said in a low voice, "The day the weapons are ready is the day the Black Feather Army will gather." Chapter 681. Mr. Funakoshi, what do you mean? After a while, Yi Fan asked Shinichi Funakoshi with a shocked expression. There were two things he didn't think of. First, Matsumoto Takeyoshi was about to gather his trump-card army, the Black Feather Army. Second, Shinichi Funakoshi actually told him such important information and even told him to pass it on to the crown prince of the Ming dynasty. This really shocked Yi Fan quite a bit. Shinichi Funakoshi was Matsumoto Takeyoshi's most trusted expert other than the green and white envoys. After seeing Yi Fan's shocked expression, Shinichi Funakoshi smiled, as if he saw through Yi Fan's thoughts. "Mr. Yi, don't misunderstand. It's not that I'm betraying Mr. Matsumoto, but I really can't bear to see the Ming dynasty's soldiers get killed by the Black Feather Army like grass on the battlefield," Shinichi Funakoshi said calmly to Yi Fan. "I can help Matsumoto Takeyoshi find the 9 cauldrons, but I definitely won't help him kill people. Mr. Yi, you can tell this to the crown prince of the Ming dynasty, and tell him to be prepared. Don't confront the Black Feather Army head-on." After hearing Shinichi Funakoshi's words, Yi Fan respected Shinichi Funakoshi even more. This person cared about the world and cared about the people. He didn't care about nationality. Yi Fan couldn't help but sigh at his high state of mind. "I deeply admire Mr. Funakoshi's cultivation," Yi Fan cupped his hands and said to Shinichi Funakoshi, "but there's something I don't understand. I hope Mr. Funakoshi can explain." "Mr. Yi, please speak," Shinichi Funakoshi said. "Mr. Funakoshi and I didn't know each other before. It could be said that we met by chance," Yi Fan said to Shinichi Funakoshi. "I'm sure Mr. Funakoshi already knows about my relationship with Matsumoto Takeyoshi. I don't understand why Mr. Funakoshi would reveal such important military information to me, an outsider who is both friend and enemy. With Mr. Chuan Yu's cultivation, it won't be difficult for him to pass this message to the crown prince." "Mr. Yi, you're thinking too simply." Funakoshi Shinichi shook his head and smiled. "Just as Mr. Yi said, I can indeed tell this news to your crown prince, but have you ever thought about whether your crown prince will believe a Japanese like me?" Shinichi Funakoshi said as he took a sip of tea from the white porcelain cup on the wooden table. After hearing this, Yi Fan frowned. Funakoshi Shinichi was right. Even if he told the crown prince about this, the crown prince would not believe him. The reason was simple. He was Japanese. "The only person I can ask for help with this is Mr. Yi." Funakoshi Shinichi lowered his head and said to Yi Fan, "Why can it only be me? Just because I'm from the Ming dynasty?" Yi Fan asked as he poured more tea for Funakoshi Shinichi. "Mr. Yi isn't the only person from the Ming dynasty on this ship." Funakoshi Shinichi smiled. "Isn't Shi Yao from the Tsuaming Hall also from the Ming dynasty?" Yi Fan paused for a moment, then smiled. "Mr. Funakoshi, since you trust me so much, aren't you afraid that I'll report this to Matsumoto Takeyoshi?" Yi Fan put down the teapot in his hand and smiled. "Mr. Yi is an honest and upright person. Why would he do something so despicable?" Funakoshi Shinichi imitated Yi Fan's tone as he looked at Yi Fan and smiled. "Ha ha ha!" The two of them laughed at the same time. An hour later, Yi Fan and Funakoshi Shinichi walked out of the cabin and onto the deck. "Thank you for the tea, Mr. Yi. Funakoshi Shinichi will leave now." Funakoshi Shinichi nodded at Yi Fan. "I hope we can drink tea and chat again next time." Yi Fan cupped his hands and smiled at Funakoshi Shinichi. "Don't drink tea next time." Funakoshi Shinichi paused and smiled at Yi Fan. "Let's drink wine instead." "Ha ha!" Yi Fan smiled. "Okay, as long as Mr. Funakoshi is in the mood, I'll drink with you anytime." Don't forget to prepare a few fish to go with the wine. Funakoshi Shinichi smiled. Of course, Yifan replied with a smile. Funakoshi Shinichi smiled and tapped the deck with the tip of his foot. With a whoosh, he turned into a blur and instantly appeared on the battleship. What a great body technique! Yifan sighed in his heart. Funakoshi Shinichi waved at Yifan and returned to his cabin. Whoosh! Just as Yifan was about to return to his cabin, a red figure rose from the deck of the opposite ship and flew towards him. It was Akatsuki. Yifan promised her that she would come here to find him at this time to teach her body technique. Whoosh! Akatsuki, who was wearing a red dress and a veil, landed in front of Yifan. In her hand, she was carrying a food box. Is Funakoshi Shinichi here? After Akatsuki landed, the first thing she asked was this. When she came out of the cabin, she saw Funakoshi Shinichi flying back from Yifan's boat. Yifan nodded. What happened? Akatsuki frowned and asked. Funakoshi Shinichi had always been a man of few words and always acted alone. Why would he suddenly come to find Yifan? Let's talk inside the cabin, Yifan said. Akatsuki understood and quickly entered the cabin. Yifan glanced at the battleship and returned to the cabin. Building a large number of top-grade swords? The Black Feather unit is about to assemble? After hearing Yifan's words, Akatsuki's face changed and asked Yifan in shock. Yifan nodded. What does this Matsumoto Takeyoshi want to do? He actually used his trump card. Akatsuki frowned and said to herself. She was very clear about the strength of the Black Feather unit. Now we can only wait and see. Yifan said with a serious face. Tomorrow we will leave for the capital and inform the Crown Prince so that he can prepare. I'll listen to you. Akatsuki looked at Yifan and said. It's the middle of the night. Why are you carrying a food box? Yifan saw Akatsuki carrying a food box and asked in confusion. This is the supper I specially prepared, Akatsuki replied. I wasted your rest time to teach me cultivation. Of course I have to reward you. Yifan smiled and did not say anything. What are you teaching me tonight? Akatsuki asked Yifan. Movement. Yifan replied. Movement? Akatsuki asked. Whether it is speed or strength, attack or defense, or even travel or escape, they cannot do without the assistance of movement, Yifan said to Akatsuki. For an expert, if movement is a hindrance, then no matter how strong his battle strength is, it will be greatly reduced. No matter how strong a tiger is, it can do nothing against a mosquito that bites it. On the contrary, if one's movement is cultivated to an extraordinary level, even if one's own strength is insufficient, one can use movement to make up for it. Using speed to generate strength, using strength to transform into moves, one can seize the initiative and achieve the goal of defeating one's opponent. As the saying goes, only speed is invincible. This is the principle. Many cultivators often only focus on strength and not movement. Only when facing an enemy do they realize that their movement is insufficient, but it is too late to regret. With just a few simple sentences, Yifan had clearly explained the importance of body movement skills. These were the experiences he had accumulated through countless battles, and some of them had even come at a terrible price. Akatsuki suddenly understood and nodded repeatedly. She usually only paid attention to whether the saber technique was swift and fierce, and did not pay much attention to movement. Now it seemed that the importance of movement was not as simple as she thought. There are several types of movement, Yifan continued to say to Akatsuki. The first type is to use physical strength, which is commonly seen in the army. It relies on brute force, and there are no rules to speak of. The second type is movement. Through a certain set of movement techniques, one can improve one's movement. It is commonly seen in the low-level martial arts sects in the martial arts world. This type of movement only emphasizes movement technique. Although it is stronger than the first type, in the end it is still at the level of physical strength. At best, it can be considered to be opportunistic and not brilliant. As Yi Fan spoke, he took a blanket from beside him and covered Baihu, who was lying next to him and had already fallen asleep. What else? Akatsuki continued to ask. The third type of movement relies on jinshi. Compared to the first two methods, this type of movement can be said to be a completely different level. It is already the beginning of the path of cultivation, Yi Fan continued. If this type of movement is practiced to the extreme, one can reach an astonishing speed in a short period of time. However, jinshi is only the basic essence of the human body. Although it can improve one's movement to a certain extent, it can only be considered as flying on land. Almost all of the movement techniques used by the so-called famous martial arts sects in the martial arts world come from this method. The last two types of movement techniques rely on techniques and spiritual energy. Yi Fan used a bamboo stick to pick up the wick of the red candle on the wooden table and said, "These two methods can be said to improve one's movement to the extreme. Regardless of whether one is an immortal or a monster, they all rely on these 2 points. Of course, there are also differences in techniques and spiritual energy. You and the white-clothed man, Yamada Shingo, are both ninjutsu experts, but when comparing your movement techniques, the difference is like heaven and earth. The reason for this is that your spiritual energy is insufficient. If your spiritual energy is expanded, your movement techniques will naturally rise as well. Combined with your incomparably swift and fierce blade techniques, you can definitely be ranked among the top experts." "You're right. Spiritual energy is indeed my weakness," Akatsuki said with a frown. "Master has also mentioned this to me before. Before coming to the Great Ming Dynasty, he specially told me that there are many spiritual energy experts in the Great Ming Dynasty and that I must not act rashly if I encounter them. The Japanese's blade techniques are simple and swift. They are much stronger than the complicated sword techniques of the Central Plains." Yi Fan raised his head to look at Akatsuki and said truthfully, however, in terms of spiritual energy cultivation, the Japanese's spiritual energy cultivation method cannot be compared to the Central Plains. This is also the reason why your master reminded you to be careful of spiritual energy experts. Increasing my spiritual energy cultivation? That's easy to say, Akatsuki said with a frown. Don't worry. As long as you practice the spiritual energy cultivation method I taught you, your spiritual energy will increase by at least 3 times in less than a month, Yi Fan said with a smile. You want to teach me the spiritual energy cultivation method? Akatsuki could hardly believe her ears. Chapter 682. In the Blood Demon Spirit World, Yumoji stood in front of the Emerald Palace's beautiful emerald window. She looked at the entrance of the Emerald Palace, hoping that Yi Fan would appear. Yi Fan had promised to come and see her that night, but it was already past midnight, and Yi Fan still had not appeared. Perhaps he had forgotten about it. Yumoji thought to herself. She closed the emerald window and walked to the emerald table. She pulled out a chair and sat down. She rested her chin on her hands and looked lost. Greetings, Master Demon King. Just as Yumoji thought that Yi Fan would not come again, the sound of a palace-made greeting Yi Fan came from the door. After hearing this voice, Yumoji's face lit up. She immediately stood up and ran to the door. Yi Fan did not go back on his words. He had come. Whoosh! Yi Fan, who was wearing a black robe and had silver hair and a golden crown, slowly walked into the room through the emerald door. When Yumoji, who was dressed in white pajamas, saw Yi Fan, the disappointment she felt just now was gone. I thought you wouldn't come. Yumoji looked at Yi Fan with her beautiful eyes and complained. How could I forget what I promised you? Yi Fan smiled at Yumoji. Yumoji smiled, and led Yi Fan to the emerald table. Why did you come so late? Yumoji poured a cup of tea for Yi Fan and asked. Something came up at the last minute, so I was delayed for a while. Yi Fan took the tea that Yumoji handed him and took a sip. You're still so busy, Yumoji said to Yi Fan. Don't just talk about me. How is your recovery? Have you eaten the night demon fruit I left behind? Yi Fan put down the teacup and asked Yumoji with concern. I have already consumed the night demon fruit. I am almost fully recovered, Yumoji said to Yi Fan with a smile. That's good, that's good. Yi Fan smiled and nodded. I'm relieved that you can recover. Yumoji looked at Yi Fan with her beautiful eyes and asked softly, After I recover, you won't come here to see me often, right? How could that be? Yi Fan said with a wicked smile. You are the future wife of the demon lord. Even if I neglect anyone, I wouldn't dare to neglect you. Hearing this, Yumoji blushed and pursed her lips into a smile. What's wrong? Are you shy? Yi Fan asked Yumoji with a smile. You're so annoying. Yumoji pretended to be angry as she blushed. When he came back to his senses from the blood demon spirit world, the sky was already slightly bright. On the horizon of the eastern sea, there was already a touch of white. Yi Fan woke up Baihu, who was sleeping soundly by the stove. Then, he took out a few pieces of pastries from the food box Akatsuki brought last night and ate with Baihu. Today, he had to rush to the capital to report the important military intelligence given to him by Chuan Yuezhi to the crown prince. The morning court would be held in an hour. He had to get there before the crown prince left. Otherwise, if the crown prince went out or went on a private visit, Yi Fan would not know where to find him. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Akatsuki arrived as scheduled. At this time, she had changed into the gorgeous white robe Yi Fan gave her. She wore a red crystal mask and carried a red sword on her back. She looked clean and mysterious. Yi Fan ate a pastry and smiled at Akatsuki. What's wrong? Is there anything wrong? When Akatsuki saw Yi Fan looking at her with a smile, she thought that there was something wrong with her appearance. She asked Yi Fan while looking at her clothes. If I'm not wrong, you didn't sleep last night. Instead, you were cultivating, right? Yi Fan stared at Akatsuki's eyes and asked. How did you know? Akatsuki asked in surprise. Yi Fan was right. Last night, she had been cultivating the chi cultivation chants that Yi Fan passed to her until dawn. She wanted to cultivate for a while and then rest, but she found that the more she cultivated, the more energetic and comfortable she felt. In the end, she did not feel sleepy at all. Instead, she felt refreshed and energetic. Yi Fan was not surprised by this result. It must be known that the breathing and expiration method that he passed to Akatsuki was a mental cultivation method that he created based on his experience of cultivating various secret techniques. The method was clear and orderly. For an extremely intelligent expert like Akatsuki who lacked spirit energy, it was the most suitable. The essence in your eyes is flowing and the spirit energy in your meridians is surging, Yi Fan said to Akatsuki with a smile. To have such a change in just a few hours, of course you're working hard. I really can't hide anything from you, Akatsuki said with a smile after hearing Yi Fan's words. Working hard on cultivation is a good thing, but you must remember not to be greedy. You can't eat a mouthful of food until you're fat. If you're greedy for more, it can easily backfire. Yi Fan warned Akatsuki, according to your current cultivation level, it's best to cultivate for 2 hours in the morning and 1 in the evening. When your spirit energy foundation is stable, I'll teach you how to use your spirit energy. Akatsuki replied softly. It's getting late, we'll immediately head to the capital, Yi Fan said as he slowly stood up. After standing up, he lightly waved his sleeve. Shwa, 2 strong black smoke and chilly wind snaked out from Yi Fan's sleeve, then slowly condensed on the ground and turned into 2 human figures. One was fat and one was thin, one was tall and one was short. These 2 people were none other than the 2 ghost kings that Yi Fan had subdued in Loyu village, Zhang Gong and Wide. Zhang Gong. Wide. After the 2 ghosts appeared from the black smoke, they knelt in front of Yi Fan and respectfully kowtowed. Greetings, mister. You 2 can get up, Yi Fan said to the 2 ghosts. The two ghosts expressed their thanks and slowly stood up. I'm going to go on a long journey, so I have something to ask the two of you to do, Yi Fan said to the two ghosts. Mister, please give us your orders, Zhang Gong, who was wearing a scholar's headband and dressed in a white scholar's robe, said to Yi Fan. I'm willing to listen to Mister's orders, Wide, who was tall and dressed in a green robe, also respectfully said to Yi Fan. It's very simple. Yi Fan opened his mouth and said to the two ghosts, I want you to guard this ship after I leave. Keep a close eye on everything happening on the other ship. Remember who is coming, who is leaving, what they look like, and what they are carrying. Remember everything. In the past, he was alone. As long as he went out, he wouldn't know anything about the East Sea. Now that he had these two ghosts, who were born from the evil chi of heaven and earth, by his side, he could leave this matter to them. Yes, the two ghosts replied in unison after hearing this. They originally thought that the task Yi Fan gave them to do would be extraordinary, but they never expected it to be so simple. Remember, don't leave this ship. You are not allowed to leave without permission, Yi Fan warned the two ghosts. There are many experts on the opposite warship, and there are quite a few among them. If you leave without permission and are discovered by them, I can't guarantee that you won't be captured. Mister, don't worry. We will definitely not leave this ship. Be careful, the two ghosts immediately said to Yi Fan after hearing this. That's good. Yi Fan nodded and said, You two stay here. We're leaving. As Yi Fan spoke, he led Akatsuki and Baihu to the cabin door. Farewell, mister, the two ghosts said in unison as they watched Yi Fan leave the cabin. After leaving the cabin, Yi Fan flicked his sleeves, and a large group of auspicious clouds instantly appeared beneath the two of them. It lifted them up slowly and floated into the sky, quickly heading in the direction of the capital. You left this matter to the two of them. Won't anything go wrong? Above the auspicious clouds, Akatsuki took off her crystal mask and turned to ask Yi Fan. As long as they stay on the ship and don't wander around, nothing will go wrong, Yi Fan replied. What I mean is, are you not worried about the two ghosts? Akatsuki explained. Although the two ghosts were willing to submit to Yi Fan, they were still born from the evil chi of heaven and earth. Akatsuki was a little worried that Yi Fan trusted them so much. In detail, the two of them can be considered to have a hard life. Yi Fan understood Akatsuki's meaning and said, They were born with the evil chi of heaven and earth. Although they have committed many evil deeds and killed many people, it's not all their fault. The reason I took them in is to give them a chance to turn over a new leaf. Secondly, I want to see with my own eyes if this fate can be changed. Fate? Akatsuki looked at Yi Fan and asked in confusion. Born with the evil chi of heaven and earth, and having the evil chi of heaven and earth, it should be the worst fate. Yi Fan urged the auspicious clouds beneath his feet to hurry on as he said calmly, If I can change their fates, it proves that the so-called fate can be changed. If their fates can be changed, then the fates of Chico and I can definitely be changed. After hearing Yi Fan's words, Akatsuki fell silent. No matter what this man did, he missed his beloved wife in his heart. The love of the world was nothing more than this. The two of them traveled as fast as lightning and arrived above the Forbidden City in less than half an hour. This is the Forbidden City? The Great Ming Imperial Palace? Yu Hongji looked at the majestic and magnificent buildings below and said with a face full of shock. When she was in Dongying, she had seen the Imperial Palace of the Emperor. She thought that the Imperial Palace of the Emperor was already magnificent and unique. Now, after seeing the Forbidden City of the Great Ming Dynasty, she suddenly felt that the Imperial Palace of the Emperor was overshadowed. In comparison, the Imperial Palace of the Emperor was not as good as a side hall in the corner of the Great Ming Dynasty's Imperial Palace. Looking at the shocked Akatsuki, Yi Fan turned his head and asked with a smile, Is this your first time in the Forbidden City? Akatsuki nodded. There are many fun things in the Forbidden City. After we're done, I'll take you around. Yi Fan smiled. Really? Akatsuki's eyes lit up. We're in luck. The Crown Prince is in the palace now. Yi Fan looked at the auspicious aura above the Crown Prince's palace and said, Let's go find Wu Qing now. After we're done, I'll take you shopping. Okay. Akatsuki nodded and smiled. She liked shopping with Yi Fan the most. Chapter 683. An hour later, Yi Fan's auspicious clouds returned to the sky above the Forbidden City. On the auspicious clouds, besides Yi Fan and Akatsuki, there was also a young man in a light blue robe. The young man looked thin, but he was in high spirits. This person was none other than Wu Qing, the descendant of an official saved by Yi Fan from a group of teenagers a few days ago. At this moment, he was holding Yi Fan's hand tightly as he stared at the bottom of the auspicious clouds with a face full of surprise. Before this, he had thought that riding on clouds was just a story that was randomly conjectured by street storytellers and unofficial historical record. Now that he was standing on clouds and high up in the sky, he felt like he was in a dream. It seemed that the world was so big that it was all-encompassing and full of wonders. On the other hand, Yi Fan's cultivation had once again broadened his horizons. Wu Qing, are you afraid? Yi Fan asked Wu Qing with a smile. No. Wu Qing turned his head and looked up at Yi Fan on the clouds as he said seriously, I'm not afraid. When you see the Crown Prince later, feel free to tell him whatever you want to say, Yi Fan said to Wu Qing. Is the Crown Prince very fierce? Wu Qing asked Yi Fan in a childish voice. That depends on who he is dealing with, Yi Fan said with a smile. He is ruthless and merciless to corrupt officials. But when it comes to the people, he loves them as his own children and cares for them wholeheartedly. Wu Qing pursed his lips and nodded. Let's go see the Crown Prince. As Yi Fan spoke, he urged the auspicious clouds under his feet to slowly descend toward the majestic Crown Prince's palace. The hundreds of imperial guards guarding around the Crown Prince's palace were shocked when they saw a large group of auspicious clouds slowly descending from the sky. Since they were born, no one had ever seen a cloud descend from the sky, let alone see a person above the clouds. Could it be an immortal descending to the mortal world? The soldiers looked at each other, not knowing what to do. Archers, get ready! Seeing this situation, the leading general in golden armor didn't dare to be negligent. He immediately waved one hand and roared loudly. No matter whether the person was an immortal or a demon, he had to be on guard to protect the Crown Prince's safety. Clatter, when the soldiers heard this, they immediately regained their senses. Squeak, hundreds of soldiers knocked their bows and aimed the arrows at Yi Fan and the other two who were slowly descending from the sky. At the same time, hundreds of soldiers with spears and huge shields were joined together and formed a shield formation. Swish, hundreds of spears stretched out from the gaps in the shield formation, each spear emitting a cold light. The bow was like a full moon, and the spear was like a dense forest. Specks of cold light could not be seen through. The Crown Prince's palace was heavily guarded. Under the nervous gazes of the soldiers, Yi Fan slowly landed in front of the Crown Prince's palace. Clatter, as soon as the three of them landed, a large number of imperial guards came to support them and surrounded Yi Fan and the other two. How dare you trespass into the Crown Prince's palace? The leading general in golden armor pointed at Yi Fan and shouted angrily. Yi Fan didn't say anything. He raised his hand and waved it at the general in golden armor. Swish, an item flew out from Yi Fan's hand and landed on the general in golden armor. Smack! The general in golden armor stretched out his hand and caught the item. He squinted his eyes and looked at the item in his hand. When he saw the jade pendant in his hand, he was scared out of his wits and his soul flew to the 9 heavens. This item was the Crown Prince's jade pendant. Anyone who saw this jade pendant would feel as if the Crown Prince was here. As long as this person had this jade pendant, Even if the Crown Prince ordered him to kill himself, he had to obey the order. Clatter, thinking of this, the general in golden armor knelt down on the ground. Long live the Crown Prince! The general in golden armor held the jade pendant above his head and shouted. Clatter, seeing the jade pendant in the general's hand, the rest of the soldiers' faces changed and knelt on the ground. I have something important to discuss with the Crown Prince. You don't have to be nervous. Get up, Yi Fan said calmly. He waved his hand at the general in golden armor who was kneeling on the ground. Swish, the jade pendant in the general's hand flew back into Yi Fan's hand. Yes, the general in golden armor said as he stood up slowly. The rest of the soldiers also stood up. Clatter, the soldiers retracted their bows, turned their spears around, and pulled back their shields to make a path. Mister, please follow me. The general in golden armor extended his hand and invited Yi Fan into the palace. Yi Fan put the jade pendant away and nodded slightly. The 3 people and 1 fox were led by the general in golden armor through 3 layers of security and came to a large mahogany door. Mister, the Crown Prince is inside. According to the rules, I cannot enter without permission. Please forgive me. The general in golden armor lowered his head and said respectfully to Yi Fan. I know. You may go. Yi Fan said to the general in golden armor. Yes. The general in golden armor bowed to Yi Fan and left respectfully. In the Crown Prince's palace, the Crown Prince, who was dressed in a golden dragon robe, was reading the memorials that had just been presented by the ministers in the court. After the court, he didn't even have time to change his clothes before he started reading the urgent reports that had been presented to him. One moment, he was frowning with a serious expression. The next moment, his eyebrows relaxed and he smiled and nodded. From time to time, he would pick up the imperial brush and write furiously on the memorials. Your Highness, he is here. An old eunuch holding a horsetail whisk came to the Crown Prince's side and said softly. He is here? Who is here? The Crown Prince asked as he continued reading the memorials. Yi Fan. The old eunuch said 2 words. Yi Fan. The Crown Prince was shocked when he heard this name. The brush in his hand immediately stopped. Yes, the old eunuch replied. Where is he? The Crown Prince asked anxiously with joy. He is outside the door. The old eunuch said to the Crown Prince. What? Outside the door? The Crown Prince put down the imperial brush excitedly and said, Invite him in! Invite him in! Your Highness, there is no need to invite me in. I came uninvited. Yi Fan pushed open the red door and walked into the inner hall with a smile. Akatsuki, who was carrying Baihu, and Wu Qing, who was dressed in green, followed closely behind Yi Fan. Mr. Yi. The Crown Prince immediately stood up from his throne when he saw Yi Fan. He quickly walked down the stairs to welcome Yi Fan. It was obvious that the Crown Prince was very happy. Greetings, Your Highness, Yi Fan said as he walked up to the Crown Prince. He lowered his head and cupped his hands in greeting. Ha ha ha! The Crown Prince laughed as he helped Yi Fan up. He said, I heard that Mr. Eldritch acted according to his own likes and dislikes in the past. He stepped on those who were strong and respected those who were weak. Why are you suddenly bowing to me today? Your Highness is a descendant of the Z-Way. You are a benevolent ruler. How can you be judged by common sense? Yi Fan said to the Crown Prince with a smile. Ha ha ha! The Crown Prince laughed. I am a benevolent ruler. You are the ruler of the demon realm. Since we are both rulers, there is no need to be so polite. After the demon-slaying conference, everyone knew that Yi Fan was the ruler of the demon realm. It was no longer a secret. Yi Fan was stunned at first, then he smiled. These 2 are? The Crown Prince asked as he looked at Akatsuki and Wu Qing. This is my friend, Yi Fan said as he faced the Crown Prince. He smiled and said, I'm sure Your Highness has already met her during the demon-slaying conference. When the Crown Prince heard this, his expression changed slightly. Other than the experts he had brought with him, Only the old eunuch and Lu Yuanshan knew about the demon-slaying conference. How did Yi Fan know? Your Highness, in order to save me, you traveled thousands of miles to the execution ground. Your Highness may be able to hide this from others, but you can't hide it from me, Yi Fan said to the Crown Prince with a smile. You don't need to mention this again. The Crown Prince waved his hand and smiled. As the Crown Prince of a country, you can't even save a person. If this gets out, people will laugh at you. I won't talk about it, I won't talk about it. Akatsuki greets Your Highness. Akatsuki lowered her head and cupped her hands in greeting. Akatsuki? When the Crown Prince heard this, he was shocked. You're the red-clothed woman who didn't lose out to men at the execution ground? On the execution ground, he had heard Yi Fan call this woman Hong Ji. That's me, Akatsuki raised her head and said. Although she was wearing a crystal mask, her clear, bright, and beautiful eyes weren't hidden in the slightest. When the Crown Prince saw this, his heart trembled. During the demon-slaying conference, he had only seen Akatsuki from afar. In addition, the situation at the time was complicated, so he didn't see Akatsuki clearly. Now that he saw Akatsuki's beautiful eyes, the Crown Prince couldn't help but feel a rush of excitement. I wonder if Miss Hongji could take off your mask and let this Crown Prince see your elegance? The Crown Prince asked. The Crown Prince's question stunned Akatsuki. She was not the only one. Even Yi Fan was frowning. This. Akatsuki looked at Yi Fan, not knowing what to do. Of course, if it's not convenient for Miss Yu, then forget it. Just pretend this Crown Prince didn't say anything. The Crown Prince knew that his words were a bit abrupt, so he explained with a smile. The stone in Yi Fan's heart fell to the ground. If the Crown Prince insisted on seeing Akatsuki's appearance, he really didn't know how to respond. However, when Yi Fan thought this matter was over, Akatsuki's words stunned him. Since Your Highness wants to see this woman's appearance, then this woman can only embarrass herself. As Akatsuki spoke, she slowly reached out her slender hand and took off the crystal mask on her face. When the crystal mask was taken off, the Crown Prince's expression froze. His mouth was half open as he stood rooted to the ground, dumbfounded. Akatsuki's beautiful face deeply shocked him. As the Crown Prince of a country, he had seen all kinds of beauties and seen all kinds of stunning beauties. However, compared to the Red Moon concubine in front of him, those so-called national toppling beauties were simply mediocre. Yu Hongji's brows were like crescent moons, her eyes were like stars, her skin was smooth, and her teeth were like jade. Her beautiful eyes were clear and flawless, and her red lips were tender and tender. Her long black hair was soft and silky, and her gorgeous white robe showed off her curvaceous figure. She was like Chang-yi leaving the Jade Palace, a mysterious woman from the ninth heaven descending to the mortal world. The Crown Prince's Adam's apple moved. Seeing the Crown Prince look at her in a daze, Akatsuki lowered her head. Yi Fan standing on the side had no expression as he stared at Akatsuki. He did not understand why Akatsuki would agree to show her appearance to the Crown Prince. It had to be known that the Crown Prince had already given her a way out. He did not know why, but Yi Fan felt a bit uncomfortable in his heart. Logically speaking, it was Akatsuki's freedom to show her true appearance to whoever she wanted. He had no right to interfere. But the moment Akatsuki took off her mask, Yi Fan felt a trace of pain in his heart. He did not know if it was because they looked the same, but Yi Fan felt that the Crown Prince was staring at his wife. Seeing the Crown Prince being attracted to Akatsuki's face, the old eunuch standing at the top of the steps gave a light cough. This cough made the Crown Prince come back to his senses. I did not think that there would be such a beautiful woman in this world. The Crown Prince's gaze did not leave Akatsuki as he spoke with emotion. Akatsuki's face turned red. She put the crystal mask back on and looked at Yi Fan. Yi Fan turned his head and expressionlessly avoided her gaze. Your Highness, I came this time because I have an important matter to report. Time is of the essence, so we cannot stay here for too long. Otherwise, Matsumoto Takeyoshi will suspect us. Yifan's mood was very bad right now. He did not want to stay here for too long, so he wanted to finish this matter as soon as possible and leave. Chapter 684. Yifan first told the Crown Prince about Wu Qing's father, Wu Shilin, being wronged. After the Crown Prince heard this, he immediately ordered the Supreme Court to thoroughly investigate this matter and arranged for Wu Qing to enter the Imperial College to be treated the same as the other students. When Wu Qing saw that his father's case was retried and that he had benefited from the disaster and entered the Imperial College, he immediately burst into tears. He first thanked the Crown Prince for his kindness, then thanked Yifan for his help. Without Yifan, perhaps he would still be like a beggar, bullied by others, with no clothes to cover his body and no food to sustain his life. After thanking him 1,000 times, Wu Qing was taken away by a eunuch. During the process of leaving, Wu Qing frequently looked back at Yifan, unwilling to part with him. Yifan smiled at Wu Qing and nodded slightly, indicating that Wu Qing should work harder. After Wu Qing left, Yifan told the Crown Prince about the military plans that Funakoshi Shinichi had told him. When the Crown Prince heard this, he was immediately shocked. Matsumoto Takeyoshi's ninja army was already enough to give him a headache. Now there was the Black Feather Army, which was 10 times stronger than the ninja army. Moreover, they were about to be equipped with top-notch military weapons. With such a trump-card army, no matter how many troops he had, it would not be enough for them to slaughter. Now, he could only place his hopes on the Yi family's Bronze Men army. As for Lu Yuanshan's Corpse Demon army, he did not have any hope. Under the slashing of the top-notch military weapons, those walking corpses were completely useless. It seems that we can only rely on your Yi family's Bronze Men army, the Crown Prince said to Yifan with a solemn expression. Bronze Men army. The Crown Prince's words instantly shocked Yifan. The Imperial Court wanted to use the Yi family's Bronze Men to fight against Matsumoto Takeyoshi's trump-card army. When Akatsuki heard the Crown Prince's words, she was also shocked. Using the Bronze Men army to fight against Matsumoto Takeyoshi's Black Feather army, what a brilliant plan! During the demon-slaying conference, she had seen those invulnerable bronze men with bronze armor with her own eyes. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, she wouldn't have believed that there was such a complicated mechanism in this world. I've already discussed this matter with Headmaster Yiyun. It's just that you don't know about it yet. The Crown Prince looked toward Yifan and told Yifan what had happened back then. Yifan frowned when he heard that. It is indeed feasible to use the Bronze Man army to fight against Matsumoto Takeyoshi's ninja army, but it is unknown whether it will succeed or not in the fight against the Black Feather army. One had to know that the Black Feather troops' combat power was extremely strong. Coupled with the divine weapon in their hands, it could be said that they were like tigers that had grown wings. It was hard to say whether the material of the Bronze Men could withstand their attack. Mr. Yi, since you're here, I'd like to ask you for a favor, Prince said to Yifan. Your Highness, please speak. Yifan looked at the Crown Prince and said, I'd like to ask you to pass on this matter to old Hero Yi and see if he can upgrade the Bronze Men's material and weapons to a new level to resist the high-grade sabers in the hands of the Black Feather army, Prince said. When Yifan heard this, he nodded with a serious expression on his face. If he wanted to use the Bronze Man army to resist the Black Feather army, he had to upgrade the Bronze Men's material and weapons. As for the casting materials, you don't have to worry. As long as the Imperial Court has it, we'll definitely satisfy your needs, Prince said to Yifan. Your Highness can be like Matsumoto Takeyoshi and send people to secretly collect meteorites from the sky. The more the better, Yifan said to Prince. It will definitely be useful when casting the Bronze Men. Okay, I'll immediately issue an edict to handle this matter in secret, Prince said with a nod. In that case, I'll take my leave. Yi Fan cupped his hands and said to Prince, once there's news from the bronze men, I'll come and inform your highness. Okay, Prince said with a nod. Right, I'm returning this jade pendant to your highness now. Yi Fan took out the jade pendant that Prince had given him and held it in front of Prince. What are you? The Crown Prince asked in confusion. The power of this jade pendant was as great as if the prince himself was there. In this world, there was no one who didn't dream of obtaining this item. Now Yi Fan was returning it of his own accord. Prince didn't understand. This item has too much power, and I have too many enemies. It's not safe for me to carry this jade pendant on me. If it's taken by others, the consequences will be unthinkable, Yi Fan said to Prince. I think it's better to return this item to its rightful owner. Prince slowly took the jade pendant from Yi Fan's hands. His brow furrowed and he fell silent. Yi Fan wasn't speaking empty words. Eldritch had many enemies in the past. Those enemies at the demon-slaying conference might only be the tip of the iceberg. If this item fell into the hands of others, there would be endless trouble. But after a while, Prince's brows gradually relaxed. He looked at Akatsuki with a slight smile. Mr. Yi has many enemies, but that's not the case for Miss Yu, Prince said with a smile. Miss Yu is Mr. Ye's friend, and her knife skills are superb. In my opinion, this item should be given to Miss Yu. That way, if Mr. Yi needs it in the future, it'll be convenient for him to ask for it. As Prince spoke, he held the jade pendant in front of Akatsuki. Your Highness, this can't be. When Akatsuki heard this, her beautiful eyes widened, and she turned pale with fright. Just take it. The Crown Prince grabbed Yu Hongji's hand and shoved the jade pendant into her hand. Thank you, Your Highness, Akatsuki said in fear and trepidation. She didn't think that Prince would give such an important item to her. Yi Fan looked coldly at everything in front of him and didn't say anything. The old eunuch holding the horsetail whisk frowned, seeming uneasy. Your Highness, we're leaving. Yi Fan cupped his hands and said goodbye to Prince, his tone calm. Mr. Yi, take care. Miss Yu, take care. Prince said to the two of them. When he said this to Akatsuki, Prince's gaze was fixed on her beautiful eyes. Your Highness, take care. Akatsuki lowered her head and said, Goodbye. Yi Fan said and turned to leave. Akatsuki followed closely behind with Baihu in her arms. This woman should only exist in heaven. Where can I find her in the human world? Prince said in a daze as he watched Akatsuki gradually disappear into the distance. Sigh, the old eunuch shook his head and sighed. After leaving the palace, Yi Fan took out the white jade mask and put it on his face, then walked toward the capital's main street without saying a word. Akatsuki followed Yi Fan with Baihu in her arms. Where are we going? Akatsuki asked Yi Fan. Didn't I promise you to go shopping? Yi Fan said without turning his head. His voice was neither cold nor warm. What's wrong? Akatsuki asked Yi Fan in a small voice. Nothing. Yi Fan replied. Did I make you angry? Akatsuki said to Yi Fan. Should I have taken off my mask? Yi Fan stopped and turned to look at Akatsuki. Your appearance is your own. It is your freedom to not show it to others. Why would I be angry? Yi Fan said to Akatsuki. Yi Fan's words were not said to Akatsuki, but to himself. But now you. Akatsuki hesitated. My mood is not very good. It has nothing to do with you, Yi Fan said and continued to walk forward. Under the mask, Akatsuki pursed her lips and lowered her head to follow Yi Fan. At this time, the sky was already bright. The capital's main street was bustling with people coming and going. There were people selling kites, making sugar figurines, performing arts, selling candied haws. There were people from all walks of life. Yi Fan stopped in front of a stall selling candied haws and bought 3 sticks of candied haws. Don't you love eating candied haws? Here you go, Yi Fan said as he turned around and handed a large stick of candied haws to Akatsuki. Akatsuki silently took the stick of candied haws. She lowered her head like a child who had done something wrong. Xiao Zhao, this stick is yours, Yi Fan said as he turned around and picked up a piece of oil paper from the stall. He placed a dozen or so candied haws on the oil paper and handed it to Baihu. Baihu's eyes lit up. She opened her mouth and took 2 large pieces of candied haws. She began to chew on them. Akatsuki took the oil paper from Yi Fan's hand and continued to feed Baihu. Oh my, I didn't think that this white-haired beast would also like to eat candied haws. A fat middle-aged man in a silk gown with a Beijing accent saw Akatsuki feeding Baihu candied haws. He was curious and stopped to watch. If you call her a beast again, I'll break your tongue, Yi Fan said calmly as he turned around to look at the fat middle-aged man. The fat man's foul mouth made Yi Fan feel disgusted. Oh, what's the matter? Are you trying to scare me with that stupid mask of yours? The fatty lifted his chin and sneered at Yi Fan. I'm telling you, I, Lord Fatty, am going to say it today. What's the matter? Beast, beast, beast. Before the fat man could say the word live, Yi Fan extended his hand and stuck the bamboo skewer into the fat man's mouth, which was filled with a foul stench. His speed was as fast as lightning, and no one could clearly see how he made his move. Ouch! Feeling the pain, the fatty began to wail loudly. Yi Fan's move directly pierced through the fat man's tongue and went straight into his throat. From now on, the fat man would not be able to speak again. Yi Fan had already shown mercy to this scoundrel. If the bamboo stick went in another inch, it would have pierced through the fat man's entire neck. By then, the fat man would not only be unable to speak, but he would also lose his life. Puff! Yi Fan pulled back his hand and pulled out the bamboo stick. Chi blood spurted out from the fat man's tongue. Ouch! The fat man fell and rolled on the ground in pain. This fat man was really unlucky to provoke Yi Fan when he was in a bad mood. Yi Fan threw away the bamboo stick dripping with blood and took a piece of oil paper from the stall behind him. He wrapped the stick of candied haws and put it in his sleeve. The candied haws stall owner was so scared that his face was drained of blood. He didn't even dare to breathe loudly. The fat man's howls attracted many busybodies to surround him. Yi Fan looked at the crowd with a bone-chilling gaze. The crowd shuddered and dispersed in an uproar. Let's go. As Yi Fan spoke, he started walking forward. Chapter 685. After leaving the Tonghulu stall, Yi Fan was no longer in the mood to walk around. He brought Akatsuki to a deserted alley. Using his movement technique, he activated the auspicious clouds and flew into the sky. On the auspicious clouds, Akatsuki, who was holding Baihu, held the Tonghulu that Yi Fan had given her. She lowered her head and remained silent. If you don't eat it, the Tonghulu will melt. Yi Fan, who was wearing a white jade mask, looked forward and said to Akatsuki. He didn't want to take off his mask now, because he knew that his face must be very ugly right now. Rather than that, it was better to wear it to cover his face. After hearing this, Akatsuki silently took off her crystal mask. She opened her red lips and took a bite of the Tonghulu, slowly chewing it. It was my fault just now. Don't take it to heart. Yi Fan urged the auspicious clouds to hurry on as he spoke to Akatsuki. If he really wanted to talk about this matter in detail, he really couldn't blame Akatsuki. What did it have to do with him, who she showed her appearance to? What right did he have to interfere with other people's private matters? The feelings between the two of them could be made clear through this matter. I'm sorry. Akatsuki lowered her head and said softly, sparkling and translucent tears swirling in her eyes. You don't have anything to be sorry about. I'm the one who's sorry. Yi Fan looked at the cloud path ahead and said calmly, I was a bit meddlesome. No, you didn't. Akatsuki raised her head to look at Yi Fan as she said this, 2 lines of hot tears falling silently. I can see that the Crown Prince already likes you. Otherwise, he wouldn't have given such an important jade pendant to you for safekeeping. Yi Fan smiled as he turned his head to look at Akatsuki. But then again, you and the Crown Prince are a perfect match. When he said this, Yi Fan kept a smile on his face, but in his heart, he was torn inexplicably. Buffon Kun, Akatsuki choked out. Perhaps one day in the future, I will have to call you Crown Princess. Perhaps I will even have to bow to you, haha. Yi Fan turned his head with a smile and said, Buffon Kun, please don't say any more, I know I was wrong. Akatsuki said with tears streaming down her face. This is a good thing. Why are you crying? I'm not blaming you. Yi Fan took out a blue handkerchief from his bosom and handed it to Akatsuki. After hearing what Yi Fan said, Akatsuki cried even harder. If you keep crying, I won't take you out next time, Yi Fan said. These words were indeed effective. As soon as Yi Fan finished speaking, Akatsuki immediately took the handkerchief from Yi Fan's hand. While she resisted the urge to cry, she used the handkerchief to wipe the tears from her eyes. Yi Fan had always been a man of his word. She was afraid that Yi Fan would really not go out with her in the future. But even though she resisted the urge to cry, the tears continued to flow down like a dam bursting. Yi Fan's Crown Princess instantly widened the distance between the two of them. Okay, don't cry, Yi Fan said to Akatsuki. It was my fault this time. Next time, I will make it up to you. I will take you around the capital. I didn't want to be the Crown Princess, Akatsuki said while sobbing. Okay, let's not talk about this anymore, Yi Fan said. Calm down your emotions and come with me to Pear Blossom Palace. The moment Yi Fan said the words, Pear Blossom Palace, Baihu in Akatsuki's arms instantly became alert. It stared at Yi Fan with its clear and transparent eyes. In its opinion, Yi Fan was very likely to give the 100-herb pill that Niechin gave him to Master Jinchan, and then have Jinchan feed it to it. As the saying goes, it was difficult to disobey a master's order. Once Jinchan ordered it to swallow the 100-herb pill, it didn't dare to disobey. Woo! Baihu let out a whimper to Yi Fan. Its voice was both sad and pleading. Don't worry, brother, Yi promised you that he won't make things difficult for you. Yi Fan saw Baihu's worry and said with a smile. After hearing Yi Fan's declaration, Baihu was relieved and curled up in Akatsuki's arms again. Akatsuki wiped her tears and sniffed, suppressing her fluctuating emotions. She had thought it through. After returning to Donghai, she would explain this matter to Yi Fan clearly. What she needed to do now was not to cry and wipe her tears, but to help Yi Fan and share his worries. She wrapped the stick of candied haws in the oil paper that Baihu left behind and put it in her sleeve. Why aren't you eating? Yi Fan asked. I'm keeping it to eat when I go back, Akatsuki answered with red eyes. Yi Fan turned his head and didn't say anything after hearing it. The two of them traveled through the clouds and arrived at the border of Miaojiang in less than 30 minutes, above Pear Blossom Palace. At this moment, Jinchan in a pink dress was supporting Yi Yun in a green robe to take a stroll in an open space not far from the waterfall. After bringing Yi Yun back to Pear Blossom Palace, Jinchan had been taking care of him meticulously. During the day, she used witchcraft and medicine to nurse Yi Yun's body and accompany him to relax. At night, she studied a large number of ancient books in Pear Blossom Palace alone in the practice room. She wanted to find a way to quickly heal Yi Yun's body. However, the power of burning the sky diagram was too strong. It could even severely injure a Daluo immortal. How could the backlash be easily healed? She originally planned to ask her master, Tian Kanzi, for help. However, Tian Kanzi didn't appear after he came back once on the day of Xiao Zhao's accident. Now, she could only study the ancient books by herself and wait for her master to come back. Fan Air. The moment Yi Fan's auspicious clouds flew into the border of Miaojiang, Jinchan sensed Yi Fan. Fan Air? Cough. 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 When Yi Yun heard what Golden Silkworm said, he immediately coughed violently. Fan-er is here? His sword chi was exhausted and he forcefully activated Burning the Sky diagram. At this moment, his hair was white, his face was full of wrinkles and his eyes were dim. Compared to before, he seemed to have aged dozens of years. Grandfather! Granny! Jinchan was about to answer Yi Yun when Yi Fan's voice came down from the clouds. After hearing this voice, Jinchan and Yi Yun immediately looked up to the sky. They saw Yi Fan stepping on the auspicious clouds in the sky and whistling down. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, Yi Fan and Akatsuki, who was holding Baihu, appeared in front of the two of them. Grandfather! Yi Fan saw Yi Yun with white hair and a face full of wrinkles. He suddenly cried out with tears in his eyes. He did not expect his grandfather, Yi Yun, to become so old. Fan-er, cough cough cough. You are here. The old Yi Yun was excited when he saw his beloved grandson. His face was full of joy. Grandfather, you? How did you become like this? Yi Fan choked and asked. Cough cough cough. It's okay, it's okay. Yi Yun smiled and waved his hand. Grandfather is already old. This is normal. But you have a head of silver hair at such a young age. Grandfather, I am sorry. Yi Fan, whose eyes were red, said. His knees went soft and he knelt in front of Yi Yun. If he had not been trapped in Tibet, his grandfather, Yi Yun, would not have suffered today's disaster. You child, get up quickly. Cough cough cough. Yi Yun used a pair of trembling hands to help Yi Fan up. Grandma, what happened to grandfather? How did he become like this? Yi Fan wiped his tears with his sleeve and turned to ask Jinchan. He knew nothing about the Burning Heavens diagram. Jinchan sighed and told Yi Fan everything about the Burning Heavens diagram. When he heard that activating the Burning Heavens diagram would reduce his lifespan by at least 10 years, Yi Fan suddenly burst into tears. Akatsuki, who was standing at the side, was also shocked when she heard this. While she was shocked by the supreme power of the Burning Heavens diagram, she was envious of the sincere relationship between Yi Yun and Jinchan. Grandma, can grandfather still recover? Yi Fan asked in a choked voice. Don't worry, even if I have to sacrifice my cultivation, I will restore 10 years of his lifespan. Jinchan said as she looked at Yi Yun with a tender expression. In order to save her, Yi Yun disregarded his own life and forcefully activated the supreme secret technique, the Burning Heavens diagram, causing him to lose 10 years of his lifespan and age in an instant. How could she not be moved by this kind of friendship? As long as you are by my side, everything is worth it. Yi Yun patted Jinchan's hand and said with a smile. Golden Silkworm smiled blissfully. The decades of love between her and Yi Yun had finally passed. Grandfather, let me use my spiritual energy to prolong your life. Yi Fan said to Yi Yun anxiously. He wanted to use the pure spiritual energy in his body to improve Yi Yun's bodily functions to prolong his life. It's no use. Yi Yun waved his hand and said, once the Burning Heavens diagram is used, it will be recorded in the Book of Life and Death. Even if you give me all your spiritual energy, my lifespan will not change at all. Also, I practice sword chi, which is completely different from your spiritual energy method. If you give me your spiritual energy, it will increase my burden. But grandfather, Yi Fan wanted to say something but stopped. Don't worry, wait for Senior Tiankanzi to come back. He should have a way. Yi Yun said to Yi Fan. Yi Fan nodded after hearing this. Since the Burning Heavens diagram was created by Tiankanzi, and he personally experienced the backlash, there must be a way to restore Yi Yun's lifespan. Fan-er, you rushed back. Is there something urgent? Jinchan saw that Yi Fan seemed to have something on his mind, so she asked. Granny is right. I came this time because I have something to tell you. Yi Fan told Yi Yun everything about Matsumoto Takeyoshi forging a large number of magical weapons, gathering the Black Feather troops, and the crown prince preparing to strengthen the bronze men's materials and weapons. Yiyun frowned after hearing this. His face was solemn and he did not speak for a long time. "Grandfather, will this work?" Yi Fan asked Yiyun after a long time. "I've heard of Ishin Sato's name. I heard that he is known as the King of Swords in Japan. It is said that the battle swords forged by this person are extremely sharp and have even reached an unbelievable level." Yiyun frowned and said, "As the saying goes, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will be victorious in 100 battles. It would be great if we can find a weapon forged by Ishin Sato for the Black Feather Troop. I can improve the bronze men's materials according to its sharpness." "That's a good idea." Jin-chan nodded after hearing this. "If that's the case, I'll think of a way to get one." Yi Fan narrowed his eyes and said, "That's for the best. However, Fan-air, this is too dangerous. You must be careful." Yiyun reminded Yi Fan. "Grandfather, don't worry. I know what I'm doing," Yi Fan said to Yiyun. Yiyun nodded. His grandson had already passed the heavenly tribulation and his cultivation was heaven-defying. There should not be any problems. Chapter 686. Oh, fly, fly, in the Pear Blossom Palace, the beautiful Fujiwara no Chiko was swinging back and forth on a pear tree swing as big as an umbrella, shouting excitedly like a child. In her hands, she was tightly holding the pair of exquisite porcelain dolls that Yi Fan had given her. They were shaped like a bride and groom. Yi Fan stood beside a pear tree more than 100 feet away from Fujiwara no Chiko, looking at his beautiful but crazy wife on the swing from a distance. He was so distressed that tears were rolling down his cheeks. Jin-chan had just told him that during the time he was away, Fujiwara no Chiko would sometimes murmur in her dreams with a smile on her face and call out Yi Fan's name. Sometimes, she would wear a red robe and sit alone in front of the dressing table. She would dress herself up beautifully with a red veil on her head, saying that she was a bride and was waiting for her husband to remove the veil for her. There was even one time when she woke up from a nightmare and ran out crazily, saying that her husband was in danger and she was going to save him. Coincidentally, that day happened to be the day when Yi Fan was trapped in Feishua Peak, covered by Gasang Doji's golden Buddha bowl, and trapped by the Yin-Yang 8 Disciples and 8 Gates Golden Lock Formation. The feelings between Fujiwara no Chiko and Yi Fan were too deep. In her mind, there was still the afterimage of her marriage with Yi Fan. As the saying goes, if you never forget something, there will be an echo. The true feelings of helping each other in difficult times produced a magical response between the two. Because of this, when Yi Fan was suffering, Fujiwara no Chiko was keenly aware of it. At that time, Jin-chan spent a lot of effort to subdue Fujiwara no Chiko and bring her back from the outside. It must be known that although Fujiwara no Chiko's soul was incomplete and she was crazy, her cultivation was not affected at all. She was worried about Yi Fan's safety and loved her husband dearly. She did not care about anything else. While she was in a state of madness, she found a wooden stick out of nowhere and used the secret technique that Ito Fumio had taught her, the 1,000-man slash, on Golden Silkworm who was blocking her way. Jin-chan had no choice but to use the double fish swallowing gold dagger. However, Fujiwara no Chiko had only practiced the first move of the 1,000 slaughter. In addition, she did not have a saber in her hand, so the power of the 1,000 slaughter was greatly reduced. She was no match for Jin-chan at all. After one move, the wooden stick in Fujiwara no Chiko's hand was cut into two by Jin-chan's double fish dagger. Fujiwara no Chiko was also knocked to the ground by the double fish swallowing gold dagger's shockwave and fainted. Yi Fan wiped his tears and sorted out his emotions. With a smile on his face, he walked towards Fujiwara no Chiko. Right now, he had to smile because he did not want to cry in front of his beloved wife. "Chiko!" Yi Fan came to the front of the swing and called out Fujiwara no Chiko's name with a smile. Husband! Fujiwara no Chiko, who was swinging on the swing, immediately called out in surprise when she saw Yi Fan. Swoosh! Fujiwara no Chiko shouted and jumped down from the swing and landed in front of Yi Fan. When he heard his beloved wife call him husband, Yi Fan was stunned at first. Then, he could no longer suppress the emotions in his heart and burst into tears. She still remembers me. She still knows that I'm her husband. Yi Fan, who was overwhelmed with emotions, hugged his beloved wife in front of him as his tears fell like rain. Chiko! Yi Fan, who was choking with sobs, hugged Fujiwara no Chiko tightly, as if he was afraid that Fujiwara no Chiko would suddenly disappear in the next moment. Hot tears flowed down Yi Fan's eyes and instantly wet Fujiwara no Chiko's back. Husband, where's the delicious food you brought for me? Fujiwara no Chiko, who was tightly hugged by Yi Fan, asked Yi Fan. Yi Fan, whose face was full of tears, smiled and let go of Fujiwara no Chiko. He took out the stick of sugar-coated haws wrapped in oil paper from his sleeve. On the way here, in order to ensure that the stick of sugar-coated haws would not melt, Yi Fan had been urging the ice core in his body to maintain the temperature of the stick of sugar-coated haws. Just like Akatsuki, Fujiwara no Chiko also loved to eat sugar-coated haws. Here for you. Eat it quickly. It's very sweet. Yi Fan sniffed and wiped away his tears. He peeled off the oil paper and handed the shiny red stick of sugar-coated haws to Fujiwara no Chiko. Husband, you're the best. Fujiwara no Chiko took the stick of sugar-coated haws from Yi Fan's hand and smiled happily. She first put the stick of sugar-coated haws under her nose and took a deep sniff. Then, she smiled sweetly and gently opened her red lips to take a bite. She chewed with a satisfied expression. Come, Chiko, sit down and eat. Yi Fan pulled Fujiwara no Chiko's hand and sat down under the huge pear tree behind them. Fujiwara no Chiko answered like a child. Chiko, tell me, how do you know that I'm your husband? Yi Fan asked Fujiwara no Chiko with a smile. He wanted to know how much his beloved wife remembered of him. I saw you in my dreams and even went through the wedding ceremony with you. Fujiwara no Chiko looked at Yi Fan while chewing on the sugar-coated haws. Mother-in-law told me that we're husband and wife, just like the porcelain dolls you gave me. Fujiwara no Chiko said as she raised the porcelain dolls in her hands in front of Yi Fan and pointed at them. This is you and this is me. Yi Fan, whose eyes were red, smiled and nodded. Mother-in-law said that your name is Yi Fan and that you're a righteous and affectionate hero. She also said that I'm sick now and have to wait here obediently for you to come back with the medicine. When the medicine is all found, my illness will also be cured. Fujiwara no Chiko continued. Yi Fan, who was sitting under the tree, listened while wiping his tears with his sleeve. There was a smile on his face. Mother-in-law also told me to call you husband in the future. She said that you would be very happy. Fujiwara no Chiko continued. Yi Fan's lips trembled and his eyes were filled with tears. He kept nodding. You? Why are you crying? Fujiwara no Chiko saw Yi Fan's face covered in tears and asked in confusion, Are you not happy? She asked as she took out a handkerchief with a picture of mandarin ducks on it and reached out to wipe Yi Fan's tears. Looking at the handkerchief, Yi Fan cried even harder. This handkerchief was the one that he had bought for Fujiwara no Chiko when he took her shopping. Chiko, I'm not unhappy. I'm just too happy. Yi Fan grabbed Fujiwara no Chiko's hand and said while choking with sobs, You don't know how happy I am when you call me husband. Happy and crying? Fujiwara no Chiko had an inconceivable expression on her face as she asked in a silly manner. You don't understand. If you're too happy, you'll also cry. Yi Fan wiped his tears and said with a smile, Don't cry. I'll give you the candied haws to eat. Here. Fujiwara no Chiko handed the candied haws in her hand to Yi Fan. With tears in his eyes, Yi Fan gently bit down on one of the candied haws. Now, his heart was like the candied haws in his mouth, sour with sweetness, sweet with sourness. Is it delicious? Fujiwara no Chiko asked Yi Fan with a smile. It's delicious. Yi Fan nodded. Fujiwara no Chiko smiled and turned her head. Chiko, when I'm not here, you have to listen to your mother-in-law's words. You can't fight with your mother-in-law anymore. Do you understand? Yi Fan reached out and stroked Fujiwara no Chiko's waterfall-like black long hair as he softly said. Fujiwara no Chiko obediently nodded and said, You wait for me here obediently. Next time I'll bring you candied haws. Yi Fan said. You're leaving? Fujiwara no Chiko, hearing Yi Fan's words, immediately turned her head and pouted her lips. I have to go. I have to go find medicine for you. Yi Fan choked with sobs. At this moment, he really wanted to stay by his beloved wife's side, to watch her frown and smile, to laugh and play with her. But he couldn't. He had to find the cauldrons, he had to collect the patterns of the 9 cauldrons, he had to study the ancient secret techniques, he had to accumulate immeasurable karma, he had to retrieve his beloved wife's soul. Only in this way could he live happily with his beloved wife forever. Then remember to come back and visit me often. Fujiwara no Chiko reluctantly said to Yi Fan. Don't worry, I'll come back to see you when I have the chance. Yi Fan choked with sobs as he said to Fujiwara no Chiko, Tell your husband what you want to eat and I'll bring it to you next time. Here, this is it. Fujiwara no Chiko raised the candied haws in her hand and smiled. Still candied haws? Yi Fan asked with a smile. Next time, bring me 10 sticks of candied haws. Fujiwara no Chiko smiled. Okay, your husband promises you. Yi Fan smiled. Wait a moment. Fujiwara no Chiko said as she put the candied haws in her hand to the side. Then, she reached out and took off an object from her neck and handed it to Yi Fan. In her hand, a guanine pendant carved from top-grade jade entered Yi Fan's eyes. The guanine pendant shone with pearls and was lifelike. It had a benevolent appearance and was round and smooth. Yi Fan saw this guanine pendant and was filled with emotions. At that time, in order to be with his beloved wife, he had specially prepared enough supplies and sealed off the Phoenix Cry Mountain's Lingyun Cave. And this jade guanine pendant was a gift he had chosen for his wife when he was preparing the supplies. Granny said that this is the benevolent guanine bodhisattva who saves people from suffering and will grant any request. If you wear it, it will ensure your safety. Fujiwara no Chiko said as she put the jade guanine pendant around Yi Fan's neck. Holding the guanine pendant with Fujiwara no Chiko's body temperature, Yi Fan raised his head and looked at Fujiwara no Chiko. His eyes filled with tenderness. An hour later, Yi Fan and Akatsuki left Pear Blossom Palace. Above the auspicious clouds, Yi Fan's eyes were red and there was a smile on his face. He was still recalling the heartwarming scene with his beloved wife. Akatsuki did not say a word and silently hugged Baihu. At this moment, the white fox's eyes were also red. Her clear eyes were brimming with tears. When Yi Fan and Fujiwara no Chiko were alone, it was also telling Jinchan how much it missed her. Although it was now in Baihu's body, for Jinchan who was proficient in the language of birds and beasts, there was no difficulty in communicating with it. The master and disciple were master and disciple in name, but in reality, they were like mother and daughter. During the time they were apart, the master and disciple both missed each other in their hearts. The situation during the demon-slaying conference was complicated, so the master and disciple did not have much interaction. Now that they were reunited in Pear Blossom Palace, the master and disciple naturally had endless things to talk about. When they were about to leave, Baihu cried like a pear blossom in the rain. Jinchan also had tears in her eyes, constantly reminding Yi Fan to take good care of it. Your wife, how is she? Akatsuki broke the silence, and asked Yi Fan in a low voice. She's already calling me husband now, Yi Fan said with a smile as he looked ahead. At this time, he was still immersed in great joy. Is that so? That's great. Akatsuki was startled when she heard this, then said in a low voice. Yifan's red eyes told her that Yifan had just cried. Chapter 687. In less than 10 minutes, the auspicious clouds under their feet had left the Miaojiang region. Yifan pushed the auspicious clouds under his feet and turned towards the southeast. Akatsuki saw that the auspicious clouds were not heading towards the East Sea. She immediately turned her head and asked Yifan, "Are we not going back to the East Sea?" "Let's go to the Purple Sun Temple," Yifan said to Akatsuki. During the demon-slaying conference, the Purple Sun Temple went to the execution ground to save him. Yifan remembered this kindness in his heart. Moreover, Qing Chenzi did not hesitate to reveal the secrets of heaven and told him the secrets of the 9 cauldrons. In the end, he lost his immortal position. It was reasonable for him to pay a visit and express his gratitude. Akatsuki nodded after hearing this. The two of them traveled as fast as lightning. In less than an hour, they arrived above the Purple Sun Temple. "We are here." Yifan fixed the auspicious clouds in the air and looked down. He said, "The Purple Sun Temple is located in the dense forest at the top of this mountain." Akatsuki replied. "Let's go down," Yifan said. He urged the auspicious clouds under his feet to descend slowly. Whoosh! Just as Yifan finished speaking, a green arc of light appeared out of thin air from the dense forest below and shot straight up into the sky. The arc of light was as thick as a bowl and was more than 10 feet long. The green light was bright and dazzling. Its speed was as fast as lightning. In the blink of an eye, it rushed in front of Yifan and was less than 10 feet away from Yifan. It was the sword aura of the Absolute Shadow Sword. Ming Yu's Absolute Shadow Sword. Yifan's pupils constricted instantly. In the blink of an eye, Yifan did not have time to think. He reacted quickly. He patted Akatsuki's shoulder with his right hand. At the same time, with a thought, he urged his unique movement technique. Shwa! When the green sword arc was less than a meter away from Yifan, the two people and the fox instantly vanished into thin air. Screech! As soon as the two of them disappeared, a dazzling green sword arc cut the huge auspicious clouds in half. Boom! After slicing the auspicious clouds into two, the green sword arc shot straight up into the sky. The sound of the sword breaking through the air was like a thunderclap. Shwa! Yifan and Wu Yu appeared 1,000 feet away out of thin air. Buzz! With a thought from Yifan, the phoenix dances in the 9th heaven. Spirit energy in his chi-si instantly came out of Yifan's body and condensed into a 7-colored ball of light around Yifan. The light barrier was 10 feet in size and flowed with 7 colors. It was dazzling, and it instantly enveloped Yifan and Akatsuki. "You stay inside with Xiao Zhao. Don't come out. I'll go and see what's going on." As Yifan spoke, he slowly came out of the 7-colored ball of light. Inside the 7-colored ball of light hovering in the sky, Akatsuki anxiously said to Yifan, You should be more careful. The speed of the green sword arc just now was simply too fast. It covered a distance of 10,000 feet in the blink of an eye. Its speed was so fast that she, who had a high cultivation level, did not even have time to react. In comparison, the autumn wind 3 consecutive strikes that she was so proud of was simply as slow as an old ox. After leaving the 7-colored ball of light, Yifan responded and slowly floated back to the area where he was attacked. He looked down and frowned slightly. Who attacked me with the vanishing shadow sword? Little Taoist boy Mingyu? Impossible. The two of them were very close. How could the little Taoist boy attack me? But if it was not the little Taoist boy, who could it be? Could it be that something happened to the little Taoist boy? His vanishing shadow sword had fallen into someone else's hands. Impossible. Yifan quickly rejected this idea. He had seen the little Taoist boy's cultivation level with his own eyes. His cultivation level was so high that it was rarely seen in the world. He was afraid that even with his current cultivation level, it would not be easy to defeat him. What kind of cultivation level did the person who could defeat him have? Whoosh! Just as Yi Fan was deep in thought with a frown on his face, another sword arc shot out from the dense forest tens of thousands of feet away and headed straight for him. The difference between this sword arc and the previous one could be said to be like the difference between heaven and earth. The strength of this sword arc and the richness of its spiritual power were 10 times stronger than the previous one. Its speed was so fast that even with Yi Fan's eyesight, he could only barely keep up with it. This powerful sword arc that was emitting tens of thousands of rays of light was like thunder and purple lightning. It made a roaring sound as it cut through the air and whizzed upward. What a fast sword move! Yi Fan frowned and narrowed his eyes. Facing such a powerful opponent, Yi Fan did not dare to be careless. He squinted his eyes and stretched out his right hand toward the void. Buzz! A dazzling silver light burst out from Yi Fan's hand. Within the dazzling silver light, there was a silver sword emitting a biting cold aura. Ice Dragon unsheathed. Whoosh! The black-robed, silver-haired Yi Fan held the Ice Dragon sword in his hand and swung it down at the green sword arc that was rushing toward him at lightning speed. The speed at which Yi Fan swung his sword was so fast that Akatsuki, who was in the spiritual energy ball, could not see the whole process of Yi Fan swinging his sword. What she saw was Yi Fan's right arm that was holding the Ice Dragon sword disappeared into thin air and reappeared in another place in the next instant. Whoosh! As Yi Fan swung his longsword, a gigantic silver arc of sword shot out and charged toward the green arc of sword that was heading straight for him. The silver sword arc was more than 10 feet long and as thick as a bowl. The silver light was dazzling and as bright as snow. Rumble! The huge silver sword arc instantly cut through the air and let out a thunderous roar. The green sword arc was majestic, and the sword aura was like a rainbow, like a green dragon soaring straight up. The silver sword arc was so bright that it could topple mountains and overturn seas, like a silver dragon exploring the sea. Boom! Following a loud noise, the green and white sword arcs from the two divine weapons met in midair. Boom! The moment the two divine weapons met, a huge green and white shockwave spread out rapidly in midair, forming a huge light circle that was several thousand feet in radius. The light circle was green and white, and it was extremely beautiful. Huff! The white clouds in the sky were blown away by the shockwave created by the two divine weapons, revealing a large azure sky. Huff! The dense forest on the mountain peak below was also violently shaken by the shockwave. Even the rainbow spiritual energy ball that Akatsuki was in was pushed back more than 10 feet by the shockwave. Within the light ball, Akatsuki was completely shocked by the scene in front of her. Her eyes and mouth were wide open, and she was tongue-tied. What a powerful divine weapon! What a domineering aura! Both parties had only used one move each, and it was already so powerful. The techniques of the Central Plains were really not to be underestimated. Akatsuki was shocked. Yi Fan held his sword with one hand and had a serious expression on his face. Who was this expert below? He was actually able to force him to use the Frost Dragon sword. While thinking, he looked down vigilantly to prevent the other party from making another move. Those who have passed the heavenly tribulation are indeed different. The mysterious sky secret manual is indeed an ancient secret technique. It's really powerful. Just as Yi Fan was guessing which expert the other party was, a young voice came from the dense forest below. After hearing this voice, Yi Fan, who was floating in the air, didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The person who had just fought with him was none other than the little Taoist boy, Ming Yu. What are you still standing there for? Why aren't you coming down? Why do you have to wait for me to come and get you? The little Taoist boy's laughter came from the dense forest below again. Yi Fan shook his head and smiled bitterly. This little guy already knew that he was coming, so he deliberately hid in the dense forest below and played a big joke on him. He turned around and waved his hand at the 7-colored ball of spirit chi in the distance, and the ball of spirit chi slowly fell to the ground. Yifan activated his movement technique and descended from the sky. In the dense forest, the little Taoist boy, who was wearing a golden-threaded Taoist robe and carrying the shadow sword on his back, stood in front of the Xiang temple with a smile on his face. He raised his head and looked at the 2 people and 1 fox slowly descending. The ground here was originally clean, but because the 2 of them had used their sword techniques, they had shaken the clouds above and the dense forest below. Naturally, the ground was covered in broken branches and withered leaves. It was a complete mess. After landing slowly, Yifan walked over to the little Taoist boy with a smile and said, "I say, Taoist priest Mingyu, your joke is really too big." It was clear that the little Taoist boy had completely concealed his presence. Otherwise, there was no way that he wouldn't have sensed the little Taoist boy. "Who's joking with you?" The little Taoist boy smiled at Yifan. "I just want to know how powerful you are after passing the heavenly tribulation, so I wanted to test you. If you want to compete with me, you can just tell me directly. There's no need to suddenly make a move." Yifan bent down and scratched the little Taoist boy's nose with a smile. "TSK, if I told you in advance, you would definitely go easy on me." The little Taoist boy curled his lips and said. Yifan was startled at first, but then he smiled and shook his head. This little Taoist boy was very mischievous. He really wasn't easy to deal with. Just as the 2 of them were conversing, the rainbow ball of light that Akatsuki was in slowly descended from the sky. "Hello, little Master Mingyu," Akatsuki, who was carrying Baihu, came out of the rainbow ball of light and nodded at the little Taoist boy. "Immeasurable heavenly lord." The little Taoist boy greeted Akatsuki as he nodded back at her. "Xiao Zhao." After the little Taoist boy returned the greeting, he immediately ran over to Akatsuki happily and took Baihu from her hand. Baihu used her furry tail to gently brush the little Taoist boy's cheeks, making the little Taoist boy laugh heartily. He was happier than anyone to see Baihu. "Xiao Zhao, we meet again." "Ha ha ha." The little Taoist boy stroked Baihu's fur and said happily, "I just picked a lot of wild fruits from the mountain. They are very sweet. I'll let you eat to your heart's content in a while." When Baihu heard the little Taoist boy's words, it immediately licked its lips greedily. It didn't know why, but all the fruits that the little Taoist boy gave it were very sweet. Every time it ate it, it would feel refreshed and comfortable. "Mingyu, is Senior Qing Chenzi in the temple?" Yifan asked the little Taoist boy. "You came at a bad time. Master went out to travel and has been gone for 3 days." The little Taoist boy smiled at Yifan and said, "Otherwise, how would I dare to fight with you?" After Yifan heard this, his face was full of regret. "He's not here, but there's still me." The little Taoist boy smiled at Yifan and said, "It's getting late. Let's go, I'll take you to eat vegetarian food." Chapter 688. Enyang Ghost Seal? You got the Enyang Ghost Seal? In the dining hall, the little Taoist boy opened his eyes wide, looked up at Yifan sitting across the table, and asked in surprise. At this time, there was a green vegetable hanging at the corner of his mouth. "Yes, what's the matter?" Yifan smiled and asked the little Taoist boy while eating the pastries. "Quick, take it out and let me see." The little Taoist boy sucked the vegetable into his mouth, and said hurriedly. Yifan smiled and stuffed the rest of the pastries into his mouth, then clapped his hands, took out the Enyang Ghost Seal from his arms, and handed it to the little Taoist boy. The little Taoist boy wiped his mouth with his sleeve, and reached out to take the ghost seal. When he saw the fire Kirin on the ghost seal lying down, his face suddenly changed. This fire Kirin has recognized you as its master?" The little Taoist boy looked at Yifan in disbelief. I have a good relationship with this yin-yang ghost seal. Yi Fan took a sip of tea, cleared his mouth, and told the little Taoist boy everything that happened in Luoyu village that day. So it's like this. The little Taoist boy nodded repeatedly after listening. No wonder I saw 2 inchi tattoos on your face. It turns out that you have done a great deed. You are really lucky. You found a treasure, got a spirit beast, and also got a great deed. It's really enviable. The little Taoist boy said, and handed the yin-yang ghost seal back to Yi Fan. You are really the first one to say that I am lucky. Yi Fan said and took the ghost seal with a smile and put it in his arms. This yin-yang ghost seal's spiritual power is tyrannical, and it has endless magical uses. It is both yin and yang, hard and soft. You are really lucky. The little Taoist boy said and picked up a big red apple from the fruit plate on the table, put it in his mouth and took a bite. Endless magical uses? What kind of magical uses? Yi Fan asked the little Taoist boy. In this yin-yang ghost seal, there are not only tyrannical yin ghost spirits, but also tyrannical spiritual beasts. It can be said that it has both yin and yang. The little Taoist boy leaned back in the chair and said to Yi Fan while chewing the apple, If this thing is kept, it can keep all ghosts. If this thing is released, it can instantly release powerful and tyrannical yin ghost spirits. It can be said that it has both offensive and defensive capabilities. This is just the power of the yin-yang ghost seal, not including the ancient spiritual beast fire Kirin. Complete yin and yang, both offensive and defensive capabilities, and it can be released freely? Yi Fan carefully savored the words of the little Taoist boy and seemed to understand something. He always thought that the fire Kirin on the yin-yang ghost seal was the rarest thing. He didn't expect that the yin-yang ghost seal suppressed by the fire Kirin would also have such a magical use. Take the Zhang and Wei ghosts that you subdued as an example. After they were severely injured by you, they only used a few hours to recover. The power of the ghost spirits in the yin-yang ghost seal can be imagined. The little Taoist boy continued, If the 2 ghosts can obtain the spirit patterns on the yin-yang ghost seal, even if they can't become ghost immortals, they can become ghost heroes. Ghost heroes are not afraid of sunlight and can travel between yin and yang. If they want people, they can be people. If they want ghosts, they can be ghosts. They can come and go freely. They can be said to be free in the world. After you use the yin-yang ghost seal in the future, you will naturally know the magical uses of it. After Yi Fan heard this, he nodded repeatedly. 2 hours later, the little Taoist boy, dressed in a golden silk Taoist robe, sent Yi Fan and Wei Xiaobao to the outside of the Purple Yang Temple. He held Baihu in his left hand and a fruit basket in his right. He pouted and looked at Baihu with a face full of reluctance. Baihu, who was in his arms, used her head to touch the little Taoist boy's forehead, and comforted him not to be sad. Mingyu, we are leaving. Yi Fan squatted down and put his hands on the little Taoist boy's shoulders. He said, When we have the chance, we will come and see you and Senior Qingqunzi again. The little Taoist boy pouted and reluctantly handed Baihu to Yi Fan. Don't be sad. It's not like you won't see Xiao Zhao again. Yi Fan smiled as he took Baihu and said. The little Taoist boy passed the fruit basket to Yi Fan and said, The fruit in this fruit basket is for Xiao Zhao. Take it with you. Remember, only Xiao Zhao can eat it. No one else can touch it. What, I can't eat it? Yi Fan took the fruit basket and smiled as he teased the little Taoist boy. Are you really stupid or pretending to be stupid? The little Taoist boy glared at Yi Fan and said, The others I am talking about are you. Why? Yi Fan froze for a moment and then asked with a smile. Hey, you're already an adult, but you're so useless. The little Taoist boy put his hands on his hips and tilted his head to look at Yi Fan. He rolled his eyes and said, I specially prepared this for Xiao Zhao. Do you know what specially means? Speaking of which, didn't you eat the fiery sun jujubes? What, are you not full? Are you still hungry? If you're still hungry, Go find that mountain god of yours and ask him to give you 5 kilograms of fiery sun jujubes. That way, you won't have to eat for the rest of your life." The little Taoist boy's incessant words stunned Yi Fan, and he did not have the strength to retort. Okay. I won't touch the fruits in this fruit basket. I'll leave them all for Xiao Zhao, okay? Mingyu Taoist priest? Yi Fan dragged out his tone and said. Hee, that's more like it. The little Taoist boy grinned and said. Okay, let's go. Yi Fan said as he stood up and patted the little Taoist boy's shoulder. When Elder Qing Chenzi comes back, send my regards to him. I know. So long-winded. The little Taoist boy impatiently replied to Yi Fan while stroking Baihu, who was in Yi Fan's arms. He said to it, Xiao Zhao, the next time you come, I'll take you to the mountains to play. I guarantee you'll like it. Baihu's eyes lit up and it excitedly nodded. Mingyu, take care. Yi Fan said to the little Taoist boy as clouds began to curl under his feet. The large auspicious clouds lifted the 2 people and 1 fox off the ground and rose higher and higher. Remember to come back when you have time. Also, don't starve Xiao Zhao. The little Taoist boy cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted into the sky like a trumpet. Yi Fan smiled and nodded. He adjusted the clouds and flew into the sky. The little Taoist boy only returned to the Purple Sun Temple dejectedly when the auspicious clouds faded out of sight. I didn't expect Mingyu's swordsmanship to be so powerful. It's really amazing. Above the auspicious clouds, Akatsuki said to Yi Fan, at such a young age, he was actually able to force you to draw your frost dragon sword. She knew that there were many experts in the Purple Sun Temple, but she didn't expect a child to have such a cultivation level. If she didn't see it with her own eyes, she definitely wouldn't believe that the powerful swordsmanship just now was executed by a child. He's not an ordinary child. Yi Fan looked straight ahead and said, Don't be fooled by his young age. He's the reincarnation of a perfected immortal from the upper realm and has an extraordinary background. If we were to talk about his background, he might be more complicated than me. The reincarnation of a true immortal? Akatsuki was shocked at first, then she mumbled to herself, No wonder. He was born with a cultivation level, and he also received the true teachings of Senior Qing Chenzi. With my current cultivation level, I'm not sure if I can fight him to a draw. Yi Fan said calmly. He's actually so powerful. Yi Fan's words made Akatsuki feel like she was listening to a book from heaven. A little Taoist boy of about 10 years old was actually able to fight to a draw with Yi Fan, who had gone through the heavenly tribulation and was a master of absolute arts. If she didn't hear it from Yi Fan's mouth, she wouldn't have believed it even if she was beaten to death. If the little Taoist boy's cultivation level was already so high, then wouldn't his master, Qing Chenzi's cultivation level be heaven-defying? Akatsuki didn't dare to think further. Do you know why Mingyu gave Xiao Zhao a basket of fruits? He even specifically told me not to eat it? Yi Fan turned to look at Akatsuki and asked with a smile. His heart aches for Xiao Zhao, so he gave a basket of wild fruits from Xiang Temple to let Xiao Zhao have a taste. Akatsuki asked in return. There are all kinds of fruits on the Matsumoto Takayoshi's battleship. Mingyu can calculate, how could he not know? Yi Fan asked with a smile. This? Akatsuki was confused. Take a look. Yi Fan smiled as he took out a bright red wild fruit from the basket that the little Taoist boy had given him. He stretched out his hand and gently split it open. Whoosh, as the wild fruit was split in half, a dozen dazzling golden lights burst forth from the fruit. It was dazzling. This is... Akatsuki looked at the 2 halves of the fruit in Yi Fan's hand. Her beautiful eyes widened in shock. She was flabbergasted. Every fruit in this fruit basket has been filled with orthodox Taoist spiritual energy by Mingyu, Yi Fan said. After Xiao Zhao eats it, the spiritual energy will automatically flow through her meridians and reach her limbs and bones. After a long time, even if she doesn't cultivate spiritual energy, Xiao Zhao's spiritual energy will gradually fill up like a rolling snowball. This guy really dotes on Xiao Zhao. It seems that he specifically told you not to touch these fruits in order to increase Xiao Zhao's spiritual energy cultivation, Akatsuki said with a sudden realization. Not necessarily. Yi Fan put the glowing wild fruit in one place and put it back in the basket. He said, he didn't let me touch this fruit because he dotes on Xiao Zhao. Secondly, it's for my own good. For your own good? Akatsuki was confused. This fruit contains the spiritual energy of Orthodox Taoism. It's incompatible with the evil energy and heavenly demons' power in my body. If I were to consume it, I'd be in deep trouble instead, Yi Fan said with a smile. I couldn't tell that this little guy is so meticulous. He dotes on Xiao Zhao so much. Akatsuki looked at Baihu in her arms and said, maybe this is fate, Yi Fan said calmly. Baihu, who was curled up in Akatsuki's arms, looked into the distance with a pair of crystal-clear eyes. She seemed to be deep in thought. After the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, the two of them stepped on the auspicious clouds and arrived in the sky above the East Sea. It was just past noon. The sun was warm and there were no clouds in the sky above the East Sea. The surface of the Eastern Sea was calm and tranquil. It was an azure blue that made people feel relaxed and happy, as if they were suddenly enlightened. However, at this moment, Yi Fan instantly frowned. He heard a series of painful moans. The sound came from the cabin of the boat. It was faint and intermittent. It was the sound of the two ghosts. Judging from the sound, the aura of the two ghosts was extremely weak. Something had happened to the two ghosts. Yi Fan did not have time to activate the auspicious clouds. He patted Akatsuki's shoulder and instantly disappeared from the auspicious clouds. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, Yi Fan appeared in the cabin. Chapter 689. In the cabin, the Zhang and Wei ghosts were tied to a pillar in the cabin by a golden light rope. There were also two yellow talismans pasted on their foreheads. The rope of light flickered with a golden light, and the yellow talisman shone with a brilliant golden light. The two ghosts were tortured to the point where they screamed again and again, and black smoke rose from their bodies. At this moment, the window of the cabin was opened. Golden sunlight shone through the window and onto the two ghosts, causing a black hole to appear on their chests and slowly expand. Under the torment of the light rope, the yellow talisman, and the sunlight, the Zhang and Wei ghosts were no longer in human form. Their spirits were dispersing, and they were on the verge of disappearing. See, sir. Save. Mr. Save me. Seeing that Yi Fan had returned, the two ghosts immediately struggled for help. When Yi Fan saw this, he immediately turned around and waved his hand. But the windows of the cabin instantly closed, and the sunlight shining on the two ghosts disappeared. Yi Fan quickly walked in front of the two ghosts and reached out to remove the two yellow talismans on their forehead. Then, he hooked his hand around the golden rope that bound the two ghosts and pulled hard. Bang! The golden rope of light was instantly torn apart by Yi Fan, turning into specks of golden light that fell to the ground. As soon as the shackles were removed, the translucent Zhang and Wei ghosts instantly fell from the pillar. When Yi Fan saw the two ghosts fall, he quickly reached out to help them up. However, the two ghosts were of the Yin ghost body and did not have a physical body. Yi Fan's support had no effect at all. Whoosh! The two ghosts passed through Yi Fan's body and fell to the ground. What happened? Yi Fan crouched down and frowned at the two ghosts lying on the floor with black smoke coming out of them. He asked anxiously, "Who hurt you like this?" At this time, more than half of the two ghost spirits had dissipated, and their chests were almost gone. They could no longer speak. Yi Fan frowned and thought for a moment, then immediately took out the Yin Yang ghost seal. Before he came here, The Taoist boy had told him that the ghost spirit on the ghost seal had infinite power. It could subdue all the ghosts in the world, and it could also release the overbearing ghost spirit. Now that the Zhang and Wei ghost spirits were exhausted, they were on the verge of death. If they didn't replenish the ghost spirit, their souls would be scattered and turned into ashes. Thinking of this, Yi Fan held the yin-yang ghost seal in his hand, facing the two quasi-ghosts. With a thought, he activated the ghost seal. Buzz, under the control of Yi Fan's thoughts, the ghost seal instantly exploded with a black light. Whoosh, a black pillar of smoke whizzed out from the yin-yang ghost seal. The black smoke was as black as ink and extremely dense. In the blink of an eye, it enveloped the Zhang and Wei ghosts, who were lying on the ground with their spirits scattered. Qi, the thick black smoke, seemed to have a mind of its own as it instantly entered the Zhang and Wei ghosts' orifices. Whoosh, with a large number of yin ghost spirits continuously entering the bodies of the two ghosts from the ghost seal, the huge black holes in the chests of the two ghosts instantly began to recover at a speed visible to the naked eye. In less than 10 minutes, the two ghost spirits had recovered by nearly 50%. Cough, cough, cough. The two ghosts coughed violently, slowly got up from the ground, and knelt in front of Yi Fan. "Thank you for saving our lives. Thank you for saving our lives." The two ghosts kept kowtowing to Yi Fan. Yi Fan came back just in time. If he had come back a little later, the two brothers would have disappeared from this world, and there would be no possibility for them to enter the reincarnation cycle again. "Don't thank me first." Yi Fan stopped activating the yin-yang ghost seal, frowned, and asked the two ghosts, "Let me ask you, what happened? Who hurt you like this?" "Sir, please listen." Zhang Gong, who was dressed in a scholar's white robe, raised his head, cupped his hands, and said to Yi Fan, "After you left, the two of us followed your instructions and carefully watched the movements of the opposite warship through the dark porthole. We didn't dare to be careless at all. In the beginning, it went smoothly, and there was nothing unusual on the warship. Who would have thought that two men in cloaks suddenly fell from the sky on the deck? One of the men seemed to be able to see ghosts, and when he turned around, he saw the two of us. At this point, Zhang Gong's face turned pale, and he seemed to be extremely scared. And then? Yi Fan frowned and asked the two ghosts, his voice beginning to become cold. Then the man flew to the warship, opened the cabin door, and restrained the two of us with magic. He interrogated us about our origins, our relationship with you, and where you went. Zhang Gong lowered his head and said, "Continue." Yi Fan's voice became even colder, and there was a faint murderous intent in it. The two of us swore not to speak, so he used a golden rope to tie the two of us to a pillar, and stuck a yellow talisman on us, forcing us to speak. Zhang Gong said in a low voice, "What about the two of you? Did you speak?" Yi Fan looked down at the two ghosts and asked, "We were greatly indebted to you. How could we do such a treacherous thing?" Wide on the side continued, raised his head, and cupped his hands to Yi Fan. "What else did the man say to you?" Yi Fan continued to ask. When he saw that the two of us refused to speak, he opened the porthole and shone the sunlight on the two of us, saying that he would destroy our souls and make us suffer a fate worse than death. Wide lowered his head and said, "What did the man look like? Did he have any special characteristics?" Yi Fan asked the two ghosts. Among the masters under Matsumoto Takeyoshi, there were indeed many who could identify ghosts, but only a few who were proficient in Ghost Dao could trap the two ghosts in one move. These people were Onijiro, Sato Kawakai, Fujita Tsuyoshi, Kamehameha, and the Japanese 5 children under the Phantom King. Among these people, Anamuki Lang was the first to bear the brunt of the attack. He had a close relationship with Yi Fan, so he would definitely not do such a thing. The second was Fujita Tsuyoshi. On the Heavenly Lake, Yi Fan had seen this man's temperament. This man was calm and kept a low profile, so this was not his style at all. Then there was Kamehameha. Although this man's skills were outstanding and unfathomable, and his swordsmanship had reached perfection, he was still the oldest among the masters. However, he was the oldest among the group of experts after all. The salt that he had eaten was more than the rice that the others had eaten. It was impossible for an old man with great skills to do such a reckless thing. Moreover, this person had always kept a low profile and had never been in the limelight. Therefore, he had been eliminated by Yi Fan. There were only two groups of masters who fit the style of this matter: Sato Kawaki and the Japanese 5 children. Sato Kawaki was vicious and merciless, and his actions were crazy. A few of the 5 boys of Japan were sinister and cunning, and they were full of tricks. The leader of the 5 boys, Ching Mutongji, was even more cunning and narrow-minded. That man is short like a child, with a sword at his waist. Oh, his eyes are completely different from ordinary people, they are green. Wide said to Yi Fan, "It's him." Akatsuki frowned and said, "This man's characteristics were too obvious. Ching Mu Tong." Yi Fan narrowed his eyes and clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles cracked. This despicable man took advantage of his absence in the East Sea and attacked the 2 spirits who followed him. This despicable man deserved to be killed. In a fit of rage, he stood up, shook his robe, and turned around abruptly. Whoosh! The moment he turned around, Yi Fan turned into a dazzling white light, rushed out of the cabin through the open cabin door, and headed straight for the battleship. Bufon Kun. Before Akatsuki could call out Yi Fan's name, Yi Fan had already turned into a white light and rushed to the deck of the battleship. "The 2 of you stay here. Don't go anywhere," Akatsuki said to the 2 spirits anxiously, then turned around and rushed out of the cabin. She tapped the ground with the tip of her toes and headed straight for the battleship. It was obvious that Yi Fan was going to settle the score with Ching Mu Tong. Akatsuki was not worried that Yi Fan would not be able to defeat Ching Mu Tong. On the contrary, she was worried that Yi Fan would kill Ching Mu Tong in a fit of rage. If that happened, things would get out of hand. Ching Mu Tong was the leader of the 5 children in Japan. Once he was killed, the remaining 4 children would not let the matter rest. Putting everything else aside, Chinkong Iha, who was ranked 5th, was one of the top experts among the experts. Even experts like Onijiro and Kamehameha had to be respectful to this person. Yu Hongji thought to herself as she sped up her footwork. On the deck of the battleship, Yi Fan, who had turned into a white light, rushed to the cabin where Ching Mu Tong was. Whoosh! Yi Fan stopped and dispersed the white light. He stood at the door with a murderous look on his face. "Yi. Mr. Yi, what are you?" On the deck, a few ninjas who were drying the sails happened to pass by. When they saw Yi Fan standing at the door of Ching Mu Tong's cabin with a murderous look on his face, they immediately asked, "Go away." Yi Fan stared at the cabin door and said coldly to the ninjas behind him, "Yes, yes." The ninjas shuddered and quickly left. They would rather commit suicide than offend Yi Fan, who was like a god. This expert who had passed the heavenly tribulation had destroyed the primordial spirits of others with a casual move during the demon-slaying conference. He did not even allow them to enter the cycle of reincarnation. They did not want to get into trouble with him. In the cabin, Ching Mu Tong, who was meditating with his legs crossed, heard Yi Fan's voice outside the cabin. He frowned and stood up from the futon. He put on his wooden clogs and put on his cloak. Then he took his green-gray saber from the wall and carefully walked to the cabin door. He put his ear close to the cabin door and listened carefully to the movements outside. However, for Yi Fan, the actions of Ching Mu Tong in the cabin could not escape his eyes at all. In Yi Fan's eyes, a short human figure made of countless green lights was leaning his ear close to the cabin door and listening carefully to the movements outside. It was obvious that this dwarf was the green-eyed boy. Yi Fan thought in his heart and suddenly made a move with his right hand. His 5 fingers slightly bent into a claw and suddenly stretched toward the cabin door. Bang! With wood chips flying, with a muffled sound, Yi Fan's arm instantly penetrated the 1-foot-thick cabin door with a steel plate inside. Qing Mu Tong, who was listening to the movements outside with his butt up, felt his ears vibrate. Then he saw a black-robed arm suddenly appear in front of him. But before Qing Mu Tong had time to react, Yi Fan's arm instantly turned around and locked Qing Mu Tong's neck. Qing Mu Tong groaned and quickly reached out to break the arm that locked his neck. However, Yi Fan's strength was as high as 500 kilograms. Qing Mu Tong used all his strength but still could not break Yi Fan's fingers open. Outside the cabin door, Akatsuki, who fell from mid-air, called out to Yi Fan, "Bufan Kun." Yi Fan raised his head and glanced at Yu Hongji. Then, he exerted force in his hand and abruptly pulled out the arm that was gripping the green-eyed child's throat. Walala! Chapter 690. The blue-eyed boy who was less than 5 feet tall had his neck tightly gripped by Yi Fan. He was lifted into the air as he gave a painful groan. At this time, his childlike face had already turned the color of a pig's liver and his blue eyes were bloodshot. He used both hands to pry open Yi Fan's fingers as he stomped on the ground. He could only exhale and not inhale. Yi Fan narrowed his eyes as he stared at the blue-eyed boy. His face was expressionless and his eyes were ice-cold. He had heard Xiao Zhao say that this blue-eyed boy had barged into the Miao Stockade area and coveted the Blue Sorcerer scripture from the Pear Blossom Palace. Moreover, he had fought with Jinchan before. If it wasn't for Jinchan, Xiao Zhao would have already been killed. When he first joined Matsumoto Takayoshi's camp, Yi Fan had always disliked this sinister dwarf. Only because of Matsumoto Takayoshi's face, he didn't cause trouble for him. Now it was good. He didn't walk the path to heaven and charged into the gates of hell. He had only left for a day and this fellow actually dared to provoke him, bullying the 2 ghosts he had taken in. This could not be tolerated. Since this fellow had taken the initiative to come to him, he would settle the old and new debts together. When Yi Fan thought of this, he used more strength and his fingers tightened. The blue-eyed boy's eyes rolled back as he struggled in pain. Lord Bufan, quickly stop! Akatsuki, who had charged to Yi Fan's side, anxiously called out to Yi Fan. Once the blue-eyed boy died, the 4 boys would not let this go. Putting aside the fact that the combined forces of the 4 children were no match for Yi Fan, if the green-eyed child were to die in Yi Fan's hands, his master, the Dongying Ghost King, would definitely not sit idly by. The Japanese Ghost King's cultivation was not something the experts on the warship could compare to. It's said that the Japanese Ghost King's cultivation had reached a heaven-defying level. Even Xie Tian had to give him some respect. It could be seen just how high his cultivation was. If the Japanese Ghost King fought with Yi Fan, it was still unknown who would win. Yi Fan turned a deaf ear to Yu Hongji's advice. He continued to stare coldly at the struggling boy in his hand and continued to exert force with his 5 fingers. Lord Bufan, he is wrong, but he doesn't deserve death. Akatsuki saw the killing intent in Yi Fan's eyes and quickly advised, "If you kill him, there will not be any benefits to save your wife." When Yi Fan heard this, he slowly turned his head to look at Yu Hongji. His eyes began to glow with a bloody light. Akatsuki's eyes, Yi Fan's demonic nature began to stir. "Lord Bufan, calm down." Akatsuki's voice softened as she advised, "Don't kill in vain." Her words had an effect. The blood-red glow in Yi Fan's eyes slowly faded. He turned his head and looked at the blue-eyed boy. Ka. The blue-eyed boy's hands grabbed Yi Fan's arm as he struggled. Shwa, Yi Fan swung his right arm and exerted force in his hand, tossing the green-eyed boy away like he was throwing a little chick. The green-eyed boy's figure flew out of the warship like a cannonball. Then, he drew a beautiful arc in the air and fell heavily into the sea. Putong! The water splashed in all directions as giant ripples appeared on the surface of the sea. This insufferably arrogant and condescending green-eyed boy instantly became a drowned rat. Phew! Seeing that Yi Fan did not kill the blue-eyed boy, Akatsuki heaved a long sigh of relief. Yi Fan did not say a word as he turned around and walked slowly towards the stern of the ship, preparing to leave the warship and return to his own small boat. However, the wind would not stop. Just as Yi Fan turned around, a giant whirlpool formed on the surface of the sea behind Yi Fan, and the location of this whirlpool was exactly where the blue-eyed boy had fallen into the sea. Phew! Phew! The whirlpool was 30 feet in size and it was spinning non-stop. The few ninjas standing on the deck of the ship saw this situation and their faces immediately changed as they quickly retreated. They felt a strong murderous aura coming from the whirlpool. The stone in Akatsuki's heart had just been put down, but at this moment, it was lifted up again. She turned to look at the sea and her face tightened as she frowned. She did not understand this blue-eyed boy at all. This blue-eyed boy was the head of the 5 boys under the Dongying Phantom King. He had a respected position in the Dongying martial arts world and was quite famous. Now that he had suffered such humiliation, how could he let it go so easily? Buzz, in the giant whirlpool on the surface of the sea, dozens of green lights shot out from the whirlpool, dazzling everyone's eyes. Yi Fan stopped in his tracks as his calm eyes narrowed again. This bastard was unrepentant and still wanted to retaliate. Swoosh! Swoosh! As the sound of the cabin door sliding could be heard, the experts walked out from their respective cabins. The loud sound of the cabin door cracking and the sound of the blue-eyed boy falling into the sea had woken them up from their afternoon nap. It's noon. Can't you let us rest? Dressed in a blue robe and reeking of alcohol, Sato Kawaki yawned as he walked out from his cabin with sleepy eyes and said with dissatisfaction. His cabin was not far away from the blue-eyed boy's cabin. The loud noise made him, who had just fallen asleep, very angry. However, when he saw the severely distorted and broken cabin door of the green-eyed boy and the silver-haired, black-robed Yi Fan standing at the cabin door, Sato Kawara's expression froze. He also sobered up half of his drunkenness. Yi Fan and the blue-eyed boy had just exchanged blows. Sato Kawaki was shocked. He looked at the empty cabin of the blue-eyed boy, then looked at the giant whirlpool on the surface of the sea that was spinning non-stop and emitting green light. He understood everything. Obviously, the blue-eyed boy did not get the upper hand this time. Moreover, he was thrown into the sea by Yi Fan. At the same time, the other experts also understood what was going on. The handsome, black-robed Onijiro had his hands behind his back as he walked slowly to the guardrail of the warship. He looked at the whirlpool in the sea with a smile on his face. The white-robed, scholarly Chi-Yao was leaning against the cabin door with his arms crossed as he watched the show with a smile on his face. He was not in the mood to sleep, so he felt bored and wanted to relieve his boredom. Bamu Chongqing, who was wearing a white ninja outfit, frowned when he saw the scene in front of him. Then, he smiled and slowly walked to Onijiro's side. He leaned against the guardrail and turned his head to look at the whirlpool in the sea. Funakoshi Shinichi, who had short hair, was wearing a gray cloak and wooden clogs as he slowly walked out of the cabin. Funakoshi Shinichi's expression was calm as he looked at the scene in front of him. He stretched his body and moved his arms. This weather is not a good day to fight. Funakoshi Shinichi moved his arms and legs as he said. That's right. This weather is best for drinking. What do you think, Mr. Funakoshi? The old Kamehameha stood at the cabin door with a wooden stick as he looked at Funakoshi Shinichi with a smile. Funakoshi Shinichi smiled and did not say anything as he continued to move his arms and legs. Fujita Tsuyoshi, who was wearing a gray robe, slowly walked out of the cabin door with a jug of wine in his hand. Then, he directly sat on a wooden chair and started to drink wine. Yokoyama Yugo, who was wearing a loose kimono, was the last to walk out of the cabin. He looked around at everyone and frowned a few times. Then, he walked back into the cabin and closed the cabin door. Yokoyama Yugo, who was once the personal guard of the emperor, had seen many fights and was not interested in them at all. In his view, a fight between experts was no different from a fight between children. The only difference was that their moves were different. The experts all had different expressions. They were all calm and were waiting to watch a good show. One of them was the leader of the 5 disciples of the Japanese Ghost King, and the other was the Demon King who had passed the heavenly tribulation. They did not want to miss such a good show. Eldest senior brother. When Kano Nagato saw this, he immediately rushed to the guardrail of the battleship and shouted at the huge whirlpool in the middle of the sea that was emitting green light. He was worried about the safety of Green-Eyed Child. Among the 5 disciples, only Green-Eyed Child was on this battleship with him. Sakuraji Haruko, who was ranked 2nd, and Mochizuki Kumi, who was ranked 3rd, had already formed a team and went out to carry out a mission. As for Chinkong Iha, who had the highest cultivation among the 5 disciples, he was also sent out by Matsumoto Takeyoshi alone. Among all the experts except for Chi Yao, only Chinkong Iha went out alone. Now that 3 of the 5 disciples were missing, Kano Nagato was worried that Green-Eyed Child would be at a disadvantage. However, after seeing the huge whirlpool on the sea, the worried expression on Kano Nagato's face disappeared instantly and was replaced by a mysterious smile. Whoosh! At this moment, the huge whirlpool on the sea had expanded to 5 feet. The bright green light that burst out was also getting brighter and brighter, reaching more than 10 feet high. It was dazzling. Onijiro and Bamu Chongqing looked at each other, and their faces became serious. Although Green-Eyed Child was sinister and cunning, and greedy by nature, his cultivation was not to be underestimated. This person was able to become the head of the 5 disciples under the Dongying Ghost King, and he was definitely worthy of his reputation. The rest of the experts saw this situation and their faces became serious. What a strong murderous aura! The old Kamehameha looked up at the green light and squinted his eyes. Funakoshi Shinichi smiled and put the cloak on his body up, but he didn't say anything. Yoshi, the man in blue, Sato Kawasaki, said with a sly smile on his face. His cultivation method was very similar to that of Green-Eyed Child, and they both combined the path of ghost and blade technique. So when he saw the light emitted by Green-Eyed Child, he immediately understood the true strength of Green-Eyed Child. Although this guy was small, he was not to be underestimated. This time, Yi Fan was in for a lot of trouble. Sato Kawasaki thought to himself, and looked at Yi Fan who had his back facing him. Yi Fan, who was wearing a beautiful black robe, stood there expressionlessly with his back facing the green light vortex. His silver hair danced in the wind, and he didn't move at all. Buzz! Just when the experts were shocked by the murderous aura of Green-Eyed Child, the green light from the vortex on the surface of the sea suddenly soared up into the sky, forming a huge green light pillar that was more than 5 feet thick. Whoosh! Inside the vortex, the waves were rolling. As the waves rolled violently, Green-Eyed Child, who was wearing a green robe and cloak, floated up slowly, and floated more than 6 feet above the sea surface. At this time, he was expressionless, his long hair danced in the wind, and his cloak was fluttering in the wind. His eyes were even more dazzling and bright. The bright light illuminated the entire deck with green light. Elder senior brother, after seeing the terrifying aura of Green-Eyed Child, Kato Nagato shouted excitedly. Green-Eyed Child looked at Kato Nagato, stretched out his left hand, and made a gesture for him to move aside. Kato Nagato nodded and moved aside excitedly. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.